Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tower Babble podcast. As always, I am Julian Mush. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza.
Hello.
And Jeremy Cozier.
Restore the Snyderverse.
Hashtag restore the Snyderverse. Okay, we'll get to that. We are live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Twitter. If you are in the chat room, thank you for joining us. If you're not, and you're listening to this in the podcast form, you can find us typically on Saturdays recording, but just keep an eye on our Twitter at Tower Babblecast for notifications on when we'll be going live so you can tune in and listen to the show live and interact with us in the show. So let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the Suicide Squad trailer. The Suicide Squad trailer and the fallout from the Snyder Cut. There's lots of interesting things, including a very interesting
Weird to go
interview.
To fallout, but sure.
I just think there's a wake that the Snyder Cut has left, and there's lots happening in its wake. So we'll talk about that. Like I said, there's recently a very interesting interview with Variety that a studio exec did, so we'll talk about that as well. Black Widow has moved to Disney Plus. We'll talk about kind of the Black Widow, where it sits, as well as how the rest of the MCU slate is stacking up. And there's tons of Game of Thrones news. We haven't had a lot of interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well,
Bunch of prequels.
There's tons of spinoffs coming. So
yeah, that's right. So get ready. Whether you want them or not.
Two hands.
That's accurate.
What do you guys? Okay, well, I'll wait till we get into
We'll
it.
get there. Dan, I'm going to make you read some of it too, so you're in
we'll
for a real treat. You're in for a real treat. So before we get into that, I'll remind everyone again to follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything that we do. In fact, there's a new page over on towerbabble.ca. If you go to towerbabble.ca/live, you will be able to get access to our live feed whenever we're there. So just an easy way to remember where to find it. That'll give you the Twitch feed, but there'll be links to the YouTube and the Twitter stuff as well. So that's and there's a window for the chat there as well. So towerbabble.ca/live if you're looking for an easy way to find us when we are going live. And help support the show by heading over to patreon.com/towerbabblecast. And by donating as little as $5 a month, you get access to our bonus content. We do a monthly film club. We just finished recording our film club, little look behind the curtain. We did A Mission to Mars, a film from, you will not believe it, the year 2000. It's been that long. So we talked about that. It was a really great discussion. I really enjoyed that podcast. So that'll be out around the same time as this on the exclusive content feed that's exclusive to our Patreon supporters. So thank you to them, and I hope you enjoy that one. Oh, Dan, what movie are we doing next month? Actually, Jeremy, sorry, you tell us because it was your pick. What movie are we doing next month?
We are doing Michael Bay's Armageddon.
That's right. Which, sorry, I didn't catch what year that came out. It's
98.
98. So it's even older. That's
1998.
The classic, the Michael Bay classic film, Armageddon.
I would say it is a classic. Yeah.
It's probably his best movie. I mean, if we're being honest.
When you think Michael Bay, you think Armageddon. You know, a generation will think Transformers, but
that first Transformers movie is pretty good. I mean, honestly, guys, go back and watch it. It doesn't. There's some parts that maybe don't hold up as well, but I think it largely is a pretty satisfying.
I mean, the thing with the Transformers movies is that he got progressively more and more Michael Bay.
Right? Yeah,
that's the problem. So the first one, of course, is going to be the best of them.
That's true. And then like the best Transformers movie is actually Bumblebee, which is not directed by him. It's the only Transformers movie that's not directed by him.
Still haven't seen that one.
Very good, worth a watch if you have any cursory interest in transforming robots. Okay, so we'll start by and Sean Tennyson in the chat, friend of the show, reading our mind, because we're going to start with a story that's a little bit of a downer, and we'll try not to spend too much time on it. But Jessica Walters, Emmy-winning actress, from, you might recognize her as Mallory Archer from Archer, which is why we have Archer on in the background here, in honor of Jessica Walter, and Arrested Development. She has Lucille. I think I don't have like a really long-term relationship with this actress. She dies at the age of 80. But her performance in both Archer and Arrested Development is iconic. It's some of the most quotable stuff. Like, it's this line that even our roommate who's never really even seen Arrested Development knows. Like, how much can a banana cost? $10. I love that. She's just, sure, she plays kind of the same character in both Arrested Development and Archer, but it's so pitch perfect. There is actual care behind her kind of like frosty exterior that she portrays in both those shows. I think she was just a lovely actress, and for whatever reason, this one seemed to kind of sting with the internet community a lot more than maybe some other passings in recent memory. Certain ones just seem to hit a nerve, I guess, and this one seemed to. It certainly did for me. And I was like, wow. It just felt like she was in the process of recording another season of Archer. Apparently, there's a whole season of Archer of her still to come, so that's exciting. There's some posthumous stuff that I think is always interesting. So again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's always weird. But Dan, do you have any thoughts on Jessica Walters?
No, I mean, I think you said it. Like, I'm as familiar with her as you are, and I wouldn't want to speak for our fans, but I most of the people that I talk to, it's Archer, Arrested Development. I'm sure that she has a whole catalog of stuff that I'm not familiar with.
Well,
but yeah, we have Archer on in her memory, and that's kind of all there is to say about it.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, we have lots to talk about, so we're gonna move on. Let's start with DC. So let's start with and then even within DC, there's a whole kind of slew of things to talk about. But let's start with the Suicide Squad trailer, because I think that dropped today or yesterday or whatever that was, and it's the most exciting thing that's happening right now. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things to talk about. We'll start with that. Really fun, I think. By the way, this is obviously the James Gunn Suicide Squad, the sequel.
Yeah, what do they call it? It's From the Twisted Mind of James Gunn or something.
Yeah,
along those
which
lines?
is weird. I don't really associate him with having
I think it's
twisted
a worse word than that.
It's I don't remember what it is, but I just like it's the new from a visionary director of for the visionary mind of blah blah blah. It's kind of silly. I don't know if that really needs to be in there. What did you guys think of this trailer, Jeremy? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, you mentioned fun in there. I think that's the main takeaway from this trailer. I think there's a lot of fun to be had here.
Very funny.
Yeah. I think for me, I didn't find the trailer necessarily funny, but I know that the movie is going to be funny, if that makes any sense. I feel like the Harley Quinn stuff was funny to me. Like I definitely did laugh at that. I'm super excited to see Margot Robbie like just kind of live it up as Harley Quinn in this movie.
Have you not seen Birds of Prey?
I have seen Birds of Prey. I feel like
you
that
have
was
seen
terrible.
But she's good in it.
Yeah, sure. I'm just excited. I feel like the what they showed of her here was really fun to me. I felt like it worked. Maybe in Birds of Prey, I feel like the setup for me maybe wasn't as good, so I wasn't necessarily on along for the ride for that movie. But I know a lot of people really dug that movie. So either way, I'm just excited to see her again. Tackle the role, and under James Gunn, who is just going to go balls to the wall, it's crazy, and just have a lot of fun. So I get a lot of that there. But all in all, I wasn't necessarily like, oh yeah, I'm super excited to see this. I just know it's going to be a fun time, and that's super cool. And that's basically what I got from it. Other than that, I wasn't like, I'm not like super excited to see this, whatsoever. Really, if I'm being honest.
Am now. I was before, but I'm much more on board now. What's interesting for me is, by the way, first of all, Idris Elba steals every scene he's in that trailer. He's just so good. I really am a big Idris Elba fan. So seeing him in this was really awesome. But what is interesting here that I find fascinating is that it seems to be reaching for the same tone that the trailer from the original Suicide Squad went for, but it seems to be working this time. And it was kind of forced. It was taking a darker tone movie and trying to lighten it up.
Right.
This is a movie that was designed to be that from the beginning, and I think it's going to work a lot more like, obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the obvious comparison.
I think that's a bit of a more like meta conversation. Like it does. I agree with you.
100%.
It seems like they're like this movie is going to be more James Gunn like Unleashed. Without any of the studios interfering.
Yeah, he gets to make dick jokes in this one.
So great. And then the trailer's entertaining. It's very much just like a hype trailer though. I'm much more hyped for the movie than I was before. But there's not a lot to talk about from within the trailer.
Well, Starro, you're not going to mention like I think that's a pretty big thing. I think there's always hints that Starro was going to be the villain in this movie, but it's cool to see Starro as the big bad. Although, is Starro always been a giant starfish? I thought who am I thinking? Who's the mind controlling one?
Yeah, Starro controls minds, and he shoots little ones at
little ones.
Oh,
go on your face.
Okay. I was like, because for whatever reason, I was like, I just remember them from that episode of Justice League where they're coming to Superman's Vulture Solitude to celebrate his birthday or whatever, and then Bruce gets him cash because he doesn't know how to get him a good present. Love that. That's a really, really, really great episode of Justice League, by the way. Really highly recommend that. But that's what I remember. I just remember that over his face. I don't remember the giant Starro. But it's cool that we have Starro. I mean, I think that's already kind of more fascinating about this movie. Again, the cast is obviously great. Everything we saw from the cast, I think, worked. Was there anything that you saw that was like concerning to you, or just think it's not taking itself seriously enough?
Well, I'm not expecting it to take itself too seriously, so
Right.
it's fine. Like, the only thing, and it's a minor note, but the only thing that I would be worried about is like too many of the like cutaway jokes to King Shark just doing something stupid because he's a giant shark.
Right.
Like there were a few of those within the trailer, and they're cute and whatever. If the movie's populated with those, then yeah, that could be annoying. But I doubt it will be. So
Speaking of King Shark, Sylvester Stallone is announced to be voicing the character of King Shark, which was a surprise. Obviously, on top of a really huge cast already, and it looks like they're going to be going the route for King Shark where he just kind of says he has like limited vocabulary. We've seen now a couple different varieties. So in the DC animated like finale, Apocalypse War, he can only say shark. I think is the only word he can say. He's like shark, shark. And then in Harley Quinn, he's actually like has a full. He can speak entirely, and he's kind of like a hacker for some reason, which I think is like a fun twist on a character who's a giant shark. He's more of an intellectual. And then this is like somewhere in between. It seems like so he can say English words, but more than just one.
Yeah, with some difficulty, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, King Shark's having a revival at DC. I'm not sure why or what caused that. Because he's also in the Suicide Squad video game trailer. I feel like, was he not?
Yeah.
So
I think that's on purpose.
So I think there's some synergy there. We'll talk about corporate synergy a little bit later when we start talking about the DC
ominous.
stuff. But
I don't like the way that sounds.
No, I think it's actually a good thing. We'll get into it in a second.
I just don't like the term corporate synergy.
Well,
Good God,
it was
shoot me.
Yeah, it's not a nice term. But in this case, I think it's better than in most cases. Any final thoughts on the Suicide Squad trailer? I think it's just exciting that it's coming. First of all, it's coming sooner than we think, and it's coming to HBO Max. So remember that as well. Obviously, coming to HBO Max
on the same day.
The takeaway here for all the big movies by the Godzilla, King Kong. I think is that not out already? I feel like it might be out already.
I don't know.
If it's not out already, it's out soon.
Well, when it comes out, we'll forget about it. I'm sure.
Almost immediately, yeah. But anyway, we're gonna be talking about a lot of DC stuff. Just keep in the back of your mind the one kind of note I would say to anybody listening is that it's all about HBO Max. Whenever you're listening to anything that's happening here, just keep that in context. It's all about HBO Max. HBO considers, or Warner Brothers considers HBO Max the future of their business. So everything they do is motivated by that in some way. So just keep that when you're wondering why are they doing this or why are they doing that. It's all because of HBO Max. Okay. So
the streaming wars have begun.
Yeah. Is that a reference to Star Wars, Jeremy?
I mean, any like Lord of the Rings, anything, right? Like,
I'm just thinking of that.
I feel like there's no point in Star Wars where they're like the Star Wars have now begun.
They mentioned
the
Clone Wars. It's Clone Wars. They say that specifically. The Clone Wars have begun.
It's always Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, right? Am I right? Okay,
but so Jeremy, what you got it if you're doing it, I guess the Star Wars way, you would say, "Begun the streaming wars have." Is what you would say because that
right.
Because that is what
I just think the Lord of the Rings one is so much cooler.
The one at the end where Gandalf says the battle for Helm's Deep is over.
No, hell no.
No, not that one.
No,
which one are you thinking of? Yeah.
Okay, it's the king or whatever that is under that spell where he's all old and like
Theoden.
He can't do anything.
Yeah.
And then he's like all good now or whatever, and he's at that wall and he says something about something has begun or whatever.
Let us draw swords. Is that what you're thinking of?
Oh, yeah, it's like the rain starts and he says, "So it begins."
Sorry.
Helm's Deep.
So it begins.
Right.
For me, that is the best. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even know.
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to get.
You
don't
understand what's coming. Essentially. But
yeah.
He knows.
Are you still talking about the movie, or are you talking about the streaming wars?
Oh, it's all tied together. That's why I think of that.
Right.
Of that. What's that character's name again?
Theoden.
Theoden, okay.
Son of Thingol.
Remember that. Remember that second part too. That's important. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit more. Before we do, I just want to mention one kind of tweet I read that I thought was interesting. It's a mini agree or disagree. Okay, this is a tweet from Brian Lynch, who's a writer in Hollywood. It's very simple. It says, "I love Jason Momoa as Aquaman, but man, would he have been an A+ Lobo?" Which I read that and I thought,
haven't heard that before.
I just thought that was a really interesting. I hadn't heard that before, and I think that based off of the way that DC portrays Lobo now, he would make a better Lobo than Aquaman, in my opinion, because he's kind of playing Aquaman as their version
a little
of
bit,
Lobo.
yeah.
You know,
he's kind of like a biker, and he's arrogant. It makes sense.
Yeah, and it's fine. I just thought that was an interesting thing. So you, Jeremy, you thought this is rote. This has been talked about before. I've obviously missed that.
Yeah, it's definitely been talked about before. And it's for me, it's an example about everything critical about what things should be, and that's how I categorize
not
that.
judging them for what they are.
That's how I categorize that specific narrative, which is tied to the main one, right? Which is the Snyder Cut, essentially, in that whole tone and world.
Right. So let's get into it. So speaking of the Snyder Cut, Warner Media's Ann Sarnoff recently spoke to Variety about Zack Snyder's Justice League and DC's future. I'm not going to, obviously it's a fairly long interview, but I will read some snippets from it. I'll just kind of take the takeaways here, the big takeaways. Here's by the way, this is an interview with Brent Lang. Trying to credit people as much as possible. So, okay. Why did you decide to release the Zack Snyder? Zack Snyder's a different person. The Zack Snyder Justice League. So the response from Ann Sarnoff is, we wanted to give Zack the opportunity to complete his vision in a 4-hour movie, which is impossible to do in theaters. This is, by the way, something we talked about. It's interesting. We're happy that we have HBO Max to let the rope out, as it were, and allow the fans to see all 4 hours of Zack's vision. So I think that's fairly consistent with what we'd already thought about. Makes sense.
Sure.
What are your plans going forward for DC? All right. We've got an incredible group of creators, television series creators, Max series. I guess they're calling it just Max for short, HBO Max.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we're going to adopt that now.
Right, yeah. Max
you guys
series
check out that
creators.
Max series the other night?
It's not good. I don't like it. I just call it, why? That's what I've never said. They've diluted the HBO name brand, which I think is unfortunate, and I'm not for the best. Anyway, sorry. So back to the quote. Max series creators, feature film creators, who are basically broadening the base of the talent that we work with on DC because we're so excited about the potential to build out the DC multiverse. Now, before I continue, I will just mention that this is obviously coming from a corporate executive. So it's going to have a corporate executive vibe to it.
Yeah, it's all been vetted.
Right.
She's, comms trained.
It's been released at a specific time as well.
So I think the reason you pause there is probably multiverse.
Well, I just think the way that everything she's kind of saying here, like we're broadening the base of talent, the way she says we're so excited. No one really talks like that. It's one of the things that when you're reading kind of corporate speak,
you got to read between the lines.
Read between the lines a little bit, but I think there is
and if you're reading between the lines, look at what they want to address and look at how they want to answer.
Let me finish this quote then.
Sure.
It's one of the reasons why I was hired almost 2 years ago. And what's interesting is, by the way, she was hired 2 years ago, but the conversation around what she's been doing, no one talks about what Ann Sarnoff has been doing. Her name is rarely brought up in any conversation. So I find that interesting. The before and after was a very siloed organization with no connectivity between the businesses. Now, this is where I think is actually interesting. DC was being developed, but in a kind of monolithic way in each division. My mantra coming in was to make it bigger and broader, and we really wanted to surprise and delight the fans with more connective tissue across the various media and platforms. I'm talking movies, HBO Max, television, and our games division. Later on in the interview, she talks about this idea of like the audience being able to see the org chart while they're watching the movies or television shows, and that she hates that idea that like as a film goer, as a viewer, you shouldn't be able to tell that this was something that was made for DC television or something that was made for the big screen, and they're not connected and they're clearly different. Kind of like how Marvel Television was separate from Marvel Studios for a while. It's also
different. Video games as well.
Right. Now video games is included in that, which is not something that Marvel's doing, so that's a little bit different. So I actually think that is interesting, and I do like this piece here. So I don't think this is all bad. And Jeremy, kind of speaking to what you were saying, I've seen this interview now talked about as a hit piece. I read the whole interview. I don't see it that way. How do you see it?
Hit on what?
I see it as it's definitely a PR type of strategy where you're getting your information, the things you want people to know about, you are getting out.
We're losing Dan.
We're losing. What do
We're
you
losing
mean?
Dan. Well, he's just
How
losing
so?
interest.
No.
Right.
No.
So Dan, what we're seeing here is the conflict between two different interests, right? The studio of Warner Brothers, who is headed by Ann Sarnoff, is responding to, basically everything that has happened leading up to Zack Snyder's Justice League, right?
Mm-hmm.
With fan outcry for it, along comes the toxicity of the internet and that whole thing, right? Which is again another subject that she wants to address, right?
Sure.
And how they do not tolerate it, and how she wants to establish that people like Walter Hamada, a person of color, which she even mentions, right, is active in trying to just really focus on including all sorts of characters and ethnicities and all that stuff, which is all positive things. But when you look at it as a PR strategy to get this information out there, this is also coupled with answers in terms of Zack Snyder's Justice League of, are they going to continue that? The answer is no. Will you get a David Ayer's Suicide Squad? We will not be developing a Suicide Squad cut. And then just basically hammering home the point of, we're excited about all the other things we have planned for. So make no mistake, this is a PR orchestrated strategy to get Warner Media's what their plans are moving forward. But also, notably, this interview was conducted before the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League as well.
Oh, that is fascinating. I thought
that
this
is
was
fascinating.
After. Yeah.
No, it's not. It is been shown that it is before, but also released in a timely manner in terms of what they want. Well, because
I don't think think it's fair to ascribe like malice or anything. Like
I agree with that.
Have a PR strategy.
I agree with that. I don't think there's any malice involved here. I think there's two distinct narratives that are battling each other at this moment in time. That is it. It doesn't matter what side you're on. I think it's, in terms of like Daniel, a very voyeuristic kind of, not really entrenched.
Trying to keep his distance from this, whatever this
this
divisiveness
so all
is.
We can say to Daniel is that yes, there are two different narratives here. There is the Warner Media, which is Ann Sarnoff, who's the CEO, but she is not. But on the other side of the coin is HBO Max, and above them is Jason Kilar, the CEO of Warner Media in general. So. And then above him is only one more, which is AT&T. CEO is John, what's his name? John Stanky, I think.
It is actually Stanky. It is Stanky. He's right. It is a hilarious name. Yeah, it's almost as funny as Doug Bowser running Nintendo of America.
Right. So the way I kind of take this is those two distinct narratives, and there's no malice here. There is just one narrative is going one direction, one is the other. And that's all that's happening currently right now.
Well, I think it's important because this is the message that's being said from the studio. So when people are like, what's the future of Justice League?
The traditional classic movie developing, they have studios and sets, right? We have Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada. That's on that one whole side. And we already know that these people who are in charge already go in a different direction than what was established back in 2016. That's already known. The caveat there is that they were somehow, they believed in making Zack Snyder's Justice League cut a reality. And here she is essentially answering, "Are you going to continue that?" And her answer is no. So that's all we know currently.
So let's be fair. So there's a couple things here that we should mention. So there's two. These are the kind of three main questions here. So when asked about how the studio will balance being responsive to fans and charting their own course, she said, I paraphrased there a little bit, "We're always going to listen to our fans, but we are in service of the broadest fan base, and we owe them an integrated, holistic strategy." And by the way, I think that's fair. I think that's true, and they do owe DC fans a well thought out and cohesive strategy.
And just
that's fair.
Before you keep going, Ann Sarnoff is in her position for a reason. She understands the business and how to run this business, and how to incorporate all sorts of strategies to benefit, Warner Brothers as a whole. Like there's no disagreeing with that. If I'm getting ahead of myself, the only thing here is the demand for something that exists, that she is essentially saying that is that is not going to be continued. That is the crux of our.
That is the biggest takeaway, right?
Is our takeaway here?
But it also circles back to what we were saying before in our Snyder Cut conversation. By the way, if you didn't listen to the spoiler cast, because you haven't watched it yet, or, fair enough. In that episode, we talk about what happens next. Where does it go from here? Do we really think we're going to see the sequels? And so remember, the underlying thing is always HBO Max, and if they're in their need and content, there's always a chance that we could see it, because there was a long time where we went, there's no way we're ever going to see Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League, right? And then we did, so that kind of changes the rules. That being said, I think what they're trying to do here is try to create or draw a line in the sand that says, no, you guys, we gave you the thing that you asked for, talking to that, like the release the Snyder Cut movement, and and let's celebrate that and that it was good and that you liked it and all that stuff. But we have a vision, and the vision for more Snyderverse is not, or the Snyderverse is not included in that vision,
right?
And you have to come to terms with that. Is basically kind of what she's saying here. So the direct response was
that's exactly what she's saying.
The campaign for Release the Snyder Cut has moved into a new phase. It's now Restore the Snyderverse. What's your reaction to this campaign? I appreciate that they love Zack's work, and we are very thankful for his many contributions to DC. We're just so happy that he could bring his cut of the Justice League to life, because that wasn't in the plan until about a year ago. With that comes the completion of his trilogy. We're happy we've done this, but we're excited about the plans we have for all the multi-dimensional DC characters that are being developed right now. So
I wish we could share the meme that we were talking about the other day.
Which one?
The one where with Batman where he says, "Be careful about what you say next."
Oh, right, yeah, and then this is the response. Right. So in response to this, by the way, we've seen things like downvoting Godzilla versus King Kong, which makes no sense to me. Like, I don't that just seems so disconnected. But this is a lot of the same things we're seeing early in with the Release the Snyder Cut stuff. So that is a little unfortunate, because this is something we talked about in that episode, was that we didn't want this.
But it's another conversation on byproducts of fandom and the internet. So for me, like, just diagnosing all this stuff, having the movie out, I'm just on a different kind of mind space about how, what you're going to utilize that part of it as the main kind of argument to what your end game is. So, and that's kind of what you're developing here, right? You're saying, those negative aspects and kind of contributing that as the whole piece to this thing. But as people know, we've talked about it many times. I'm on the opposite side of that. I don't see it that way. But just continue, kind of what you're going to say.
Well, no, I'm just what I'm trying to illustrate here is that there's seems that there is a bit of a pattern, and that one of the things you talked about was what happens after the movie comes out, and the response seems to be more of the same, which was a lot of divisive dialogue from both sides, from the studio, from the fan. Like, it was a lot, and I was really hoping that we could move on from that.
It's too early to tell. Of course, there were going to be some pieces of it that extant pieces that stayed around, but I think it will largely die within the next few months, hopefully.
I think that's what they said about the suicide.
Yeah, maybe not.
The Snyder Cut stuff. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, one of the other things that I thought was interesting out of this was who is really kind of shepherding this. Is there the kind of the tone of this question is, you talked about enlisting a broad range of voices when it comes to charting the future of DC. Is there one person calling the shots? And really the spirit of this question is there a Kevin Feige at DC, right?
Yeah.
And so the answer is, the connective tissue in the middle is Jim Lee, who oversees DC Comics. Jim lives and breathes the canon of DC, and he works with all the divisions to make sure the storylines are true to canon. He helps them come up with ideas for new storylines. Jim is very much in the middle of everything, but the group together helps spur on new ideas. There's not one person calling the shots, because I want all the voices in the room to offer their expertise and knowledge of their formats. I think that's a little bit of a push, in the sense that, hey, we have a guy who's in charge of the comics division, and he knows the comics, so he can be a consultant, right?
Yeah, that's literally it.
But really, there is no Kevin Feige.
Yeah. No matter what, and Sarnoff is at the top. she's calling the shots, and it's always based
to
off
be fair,
business.
Kevin Feige's not at like he might be at the top of Marvel Studios, but he also answers to the president of Disney, right? Like, so it's like
and the only thing that he's ever the only thing that Kevin Feige has answered to, the president of Disney, which his name is escaping me, but was Disney Plus and creating TV shows from the MCU, which Kevin Feige had to say yes, and he has created
and
them.
he may or may not have wanted to do that.
Exactly, and WandaVision is the perfect example of whether if it's necessary or not, because the polarizing effects of that show are clearly evident.
Right, and like I think, by the way, if you guys seen the first 2 episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think
I have not.
The Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 2, I think, shows some signs, and this show was supposed to be the first Marvel show, was shot and produced ahead of WandaVision. I think it shows some signs of some growing pains at Marvel Studios. Been trying to come to terms or understand kind of the differences in the medium of what makes a TV show work and what makes a movie work, and the differences of that. I think there's a little bit of, you can see some of those seams in the second episode. We can maybe talk about that at the end of this. But I think that is interesting. So, any final thoughts on this stuff? It's still evolving, but really the takeaway here is that DC is trying to at least put its foot down and say, no, we're moving on. Whether or not that message will be accepted broadly is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Dan thinks, just based off this conversation alone, I guess. Like, and these quotes. How do you kind of look at the situation, and how do you see it and whatnot?
Okay, so broad strokes here, trying to understand, like,
it's a lot.
On this, and just for the record, I absolutely despise trying to translate corp speak like this. This is kind of like
it's my job.
It's what I do for my day job, and I hate
you guys should be pretty good at it then.
We actually are good. I think I am good at it. That's why, like, when I'm reading these, I can see through the lines a little bit.
Like, so the things like, yes, we are so excited about this, and this is just their way of introducing what their plan is as opposed to the Snyder plan, or whatever, right? So my understanding is that the fans want more Snyderverse. They want more of the Snyder's sequels. They want more of this style, this tone, everything.
Yeah.
And
the new one is restore the Snyderverse.
There you go. And
within the multiverse. Yeah.
Right, which is the kind of what they're talking about here, is that the DC is taking a multiverse approach.
Well, honestly,
which again is not really connected tissue, or that's all it really is. It's not necessarily what the MCU is, which is the next one connects, the next one connects, the next one connects, then they all connect.
So it does a little bit clash with what she says about, like, we owe the fans a cohesive plan, right? Because when she says that, goal. And then they're like, well, we're really taking a multiverse approach, is really just kind of like it all exists together, but only when we want it to, and only when.
And that's why I asked your guys' opinions and Dan's, right? When you say you see this all the time, like, how do you really dissect this, and what do you really think their intention is?
Normally, when it comes to dissecting and translating corp speak, like, it doesn't really mean much. A lot of most of those these paragraphs could be a sentence rather than a paragraph, first of all, but like they're not really saying anything. It's a lot of circular logic, a lot of just
a lot of dancing around is what I see.
Yeah, it's a lot of, we like this and we like this, and we'll see what happens in the future. That's all it is. It's very nondescript. It's very vague, deliberately so. There's another
quote you left out of here, which is, she says fans should trust and be excited with the plans that we have. I don't know. Well, I think
that is fair. I mean, they're always going to feel that, like, hey,
100%.
We believe in this, and we hope we would like. Basically, what she's saying is, I think, again, translating corporate speak, is saying. Give it a chance. What she's saying is give it a chance, because she doesn't feel like the Snyderverse part of the fandom is giving these other.
But the thing is that I latch on to when you say give it a chance, is that is also saying give up the other thing.
Yeah,
so that's kind of that is the disconnect, and that's why this is a PR spin. Get this ahead out there. Let everyone know what we're about, and that's cool. They are well in their rights to do whatever they want. But you need to dissect why they want to do that. And on my perspective, it's sour grapes. It is something that they gave into, and people will either spin the narrative that they gave in to toxicity and an outpour of people. And in your narrative, it is basically
Jeremy,
that.
If you feel like they're responding with sour grapes, it's because that's how they feel too, right?
But the thing is, that's too bad, man. The customers. That's
it
what
might be
matters.
too bad, but that might. But if that's
and
how
top
it comes
of,
off.
but on top of that, no, like I said, it's completely well in their rights to do that. They are Warner Media. She is the head of the studios and network.
Right. No one's arguing that they don't have the right to do it.
But above that, right, is the connective tissue between Warner Media and HBO Max.
Yes. Which I think, again, comes back. Always
now
comes back
there's
to
the
HBO
two
Max.
narratives. It is move on, or continue something that is, you want to call it a movement, or people are passionate, all that stuff. It's either you say toxicity or passionate, right? I tend to gravitate towards the positive side of it, of the passionate fan base.
Well, they might be passionate, but there's a lot of expressing that passion in negative ways. And again,
that's the thing,
rehashing
though,
a lot of conversation.
Exactly, but the thing that we need to come to a conclusion of is that is in every single fandom.
Right, but for whatever reason,
we can't label this one and say cancel it because of this.
Well, I don't think they're saying cancel it. They're just saying hey,
the
studio's moving on. Like,
that's what they are. That's what they are saying, because if there's analytics and numbers and response,
you think they definitely know those numbers. And so what I'm coming down on this is
maybe not at the time of this interview, right?
Well, maybe not.
Well, the numbers for Zack Snyder Justice League haven't even been released. They haven't even been released.
Well, that's because we don't know the numbers for any streaming services. We talked about this when we talked about the.
But that doesn't matter. There's
Nielsen
people at the top
away.
of these companies that is their job. They need to look at that.
Exactly.
And they need to figure out a business plan on top of that.
If
this
they think
Warner
it makes
Media
sense,
and Sarnoff was an interview before this was released, so that's all good.
Right.
That like I said, it's all in their rights to do what they want to do. But the thing is, you can't ignore certain numbers and response.
Well, I guess
so
that's what it comes down to. It's like if ultimately restoring the Snyderverse makes sense financially, they'll do it, right? I mean, like, because they need the content for HBO Max.
100%. But again, the thing is that they decided that if the numbers made sense, they do not care.
We don't know that. We're speculating. Then.
Well, I think it makes sense in terms of the people in charge and the decisions they made, right? Because we're trying to ignore the 2017 decision to erase this movie from existence and make a movie by committee. And that's essentially what happened, and those people are still in power, except for
don't we want to move on from that? I think we want to move on from that. It doesn't everybody want to?
Yeah, from the people who made the decision to create the 2017 version.
I don't want to relive or rehash that stuff. Like, we got the new version, and it's way better.
It's all entangled because those people are still there, and they had to respond to the outpour of why isn't this the correct movie.
But they did.
That's fair, and they did. And now there's two narratives. It's you got what you asked for, shut up. And we'd like to see the conclusion of this. How about you think about that if you have a message of multiverse? And that's the conversation. Yeah. So it's either on one side or the other. I'm on the opposite side of you, as in moving on in terms of you got what you asked for. But for me, it's like if you preach multiverse, if you preach creative decisions and all that stuff, let's see this through. That's where I'm at, and that's it. That's all it is, really.
Sure, I would like to see the conclusion, because like it's crazy that they ended a trilogy on a cliffhanger, and well, not necessarily cliffhanger, but
it's a massive
with
cliffhanger.
A teaser. Well, it's a teaser. It's not technically a cliffhanger. That story did wrap up. I mean, but
the epilogue is the like we discussed. It's basically a post-credit sequence,
right? So it's like, of course, you want to see
the Lex Luthor Deathstroke was the post-credit sequence in the initial cut of Justice League, because they wanted to continue that universe, but nobody. But
you also got to consider how expensive that movie was. Like, it's probably one of the most expensive movies ever made now.
Sure,
right? Like,
but then you have to consider the budget for streaming TV shows like The Mandalorian and then the technology.
$10 million an episode or whatever,
and all those things, right? So that to me, that is the future of the Snyderverse, is essentially HBO Max. I understand that Warner Media wants to move on. I can have my opinion or based off what's out there and what they're saying in terms of PR type stuff, that it is a certain amount of sour grapes, and you try to attach the internet toxicity around that as the main narrative. But I think that's totally unfair. And I believe that you're on that side and I'm on the opposite side, and that's completely fine. We're just at an
impasse.
It is what it is.
Well,
but now we get to see how it all unfolds, and it's not really in your control or my control at all.
No, part of the problem is that no one's in control. That's a little bit of the issue, right? And this, by the way, that's probably part of why I kind of saw it called a hit piece on like a couple different places. Is that like that there's this reading between the lines and this like this sour grape, feeling of sour grapes that may or may not be there for real. We don't know.
I think it is because,
but we don't know for sure.
If you look into like when they announce certain things, it's like the Snyder Cut comes out, the interview comes out. It's reported that it was before, but then the day after the interview, how many news stories broke about DC and their plans?
I think that's they're just
because
riding,
that's supposed to overshadow it, right?
But I think the idea here is that not the case. I think what they're trying to do is ride the coattails of the Snyder Cut, not the opposite, not the other way, not to try to bury the Snyder Cut.
But that's exactly what it is, because it's exactly what the interview is. We are excited that he fulfilled his trilogy.
What was the number one question that we had coming out of that
we are
review?
excited for what is to come that we planned.
What was our number one question?
We get announcements of that. Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate.
Right.
We have another actor replacing Billy Crudup as Barry Allen's father.
Yeah.
We have a Zatanna movie in the works, and this person's writing it. Dude, all 6 of those, there's another one. All 6 of those were dropped.
It's all part of the
after the article.
Yeah, because it's all part of the same PR strategy. But I don't. But they're riding on because DC's in the news. It's not because they want to bury the Snyder. See, that's where I'm just going to disagree with you there. I don't think that's what's going on.
Sure, no, that's totally fair. But I lean towards that side because of this interview that we read and her Sarno's answers.
Listen,
that's why I believe that it is to bury it and move on, because she literally says
the reason you guys are arguing, the reality of this, we're going to keep using this amorphous term of corpse speak. The reality is it's designed for both of those things to be true. That's why you guys are disagreeing, because you're just interpreting different parts of it. The whole thing is it's not committing to either side. That's why you guys can disagree about how to interpret it.
It is in some sense.
Aren't you committing if you literally say
we're not moving on with continuing? Yeah, you are committing to
that. But what I mean with the way that it's phrased is that we appreciate the fans, we love the fans, we would love to be able to do this for the fans, but we also have our own. We
can't ignore the butts, guys. Come on.
I'm not saying to ignore the butts at all. I'm just saying that they're leaving room. They're leaving. It's open to interpretation from either side, and that's why it's become an argument. But it's deliberate.
I think the reason that this article comes out when it does is because the biggest question out of the movie was what comes next, and that's an answer to this, right?
This is all planned. To me, we don't know how the movie was going to be received. They could have very well said, because there was reports that the movie was unwatchable. So they could have had this plan because they knew they didn't think that.
Now we're speculating again. I just think the less we speculate,
we're speculating. We're speculating completely off of the PR interview.
Yeah,
that's completely normal.
We have to move on from this story.
This is this is fascinating.
I find it fascinating. I also
Daniel?
find it fascinating.
It's not fascinating.
How is it not?
I find it fascinating, and it also just feels like you guys are diametrically opposed and aren't going to find it.
But we've already established that we are, though. That's why it's fascinating, because
I know.
I agree with both sides of the thing. I'm just saying where I lean towards more as a more exciting approach to me, rather than the necessary. You got what you wanted. Let's move on.
But the more exciting narrative doesn't necessarily mean it's the better one. I mean, I don't know. That's
that's all subjective for sure. But like for me, it's like you see the Suicide Squad trailer. It's like I agree that it's going to be a fun time, but it's not as exciting or
it's
to
different.
Me
it's definitely different. It's more in line with what we saw out of Aquaman, obviously, right? So. Let's talk about the fun thing. Pierce Brosnan. You mentioned Pierce Brosnan cast as Dr. Fate in the upcoming Black Adam movie.
Which you said was the greatest news you've ever heard.
This is the greatest news I've ever heard. I love Pierce Brosnan. He's my favorite.
And you know that I'm a huge Dr. Fate fan. So
I know exactly. So it's a match made in heaven, really, is what it is. Mm-hmm. Dan, I know you obviously largely agree, right?
Yeah. Pierce Brosnan's great. I mean, he's going to be in the mask the whole time. I think he's a bit of a hammy actor sometimes, but that kind of makes sense for this role, so it's fine. I think that's great.
I'm excited to see him kind of ham it up a little bit under that helmet. And more of these roles with characters who wear helmets and they're not afraid to actually have them wear the helmets, which they were in like early on, like the early Judge Dredd and that kind of stuff. The more the chance you get to do stuff like what The Mandalorian did, which is not be able to get somebody like Pedro Pascal to play the main character, but not have to have him on set every day. Same thing. Pierce Brosnan, old guy now, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need him on set every day, but we get to have his acting chops brought to the performance anyway. I think it really opens up a lot of what Mandalorian did, by the way, on the television side. Really is the future of filmmaking in a lot of ways. It's really exciting.
The Mandalorian plays a major part in like all things entertainment right now.
It's a delineating line.
And that's why it's so fascinating. The whole Hollywood production procedure is just so fascinating to me.
Everything in Hollywood right now is in flux because they don't know the future of movie theaters. Mm-hmm. We know that streaming is important, but we don't know how exactly that's going to work. Like, is there really room for an HBO Max, a Paramount Plus, a Disney Plus, an Apple TV Plus, all the pluses, a Hulu? Like, is there really room for all those? Like, we're going to find out over the next couple of years, and it's going to bring tons of content. And content, by the way, is the word.
Room for. There is not room for Stack TV because they have goddamn commercials in the middle. They want me to pay $12.99 a month and then watch 6 commercials.
You can pay more.
You did it.
I haven't paid. I'm in a free trial. I'm definitely not going to keep subscribing to it. I just wanted it for this one show, Cosmos. There's a new season of Cosmos. But there's like 4 commercials within the episode. And then I went to watch a movie on that streaming service the other day, and there were like 18 little blocks for ads. I'm like, of course I'm not going to use this.
So that's funny you mentioned that. There's
Stack TV. Get out of here.
There's an HBO Max ad-supported model of HBO Max coming,
and you
later
can't
this
skip
year.
the ads. You can't fast forward away from the ads.
I bet you there's a premium model you could pay more to not get ads, which is what HBO Max is going to do. Hulu has that same model.
In a movie, I can understand a TV show in a movie.
In the middle of a movie?
In the middle of a movie.
No, that's unacceptable.
A million of them.
Unacceptable. That is. It's like watching a movie on television. It's complete. It breaks the entire thing.
Get out of here.
Okay. I'm with you on this one, Dan.
Furious.
So okay, let's quickly before we move on from Dr. Fate. Can we give the audiences a quick recap? Who is Dr. Fate? Why is he cool? Jeremy, he's you really like him. Explain who is Dr. Fate. And why do you think Pierce Brosnan?
I'm gonna throw this over to Dan. I couldn't tell you like his alter ego name, his.
No, he has multiple alter egos. Yeah.
Well, okay, so here's what this is loosely from memory. Dr. Fate is an agent of order, of the realm of order, and they're eternal enemies with the realm of chaos. So he's sort of the DC analog to Doctor Strange, like the Sorcerer Supreme sort of thing. He's the protector of the Earth. And he protects the Earth from
magical,
from chaos, essentially. But he is more on the magic side, like Doctor Strange.
Morgan Le Fay is often a
it's like this kind of opens up the door for like Justice League Dark kind of stuff, all the more mystical area,
which we know is
John Constantine
is basically behind the scenes in production with J.J. Abrams.
Yeah,
I just want them to bring the same guy that they had played, not Keanu Reeves. Although he plays a fine John Constantine, the guy that they had, the guy who played CW, but he actually had his own show and they brought him into the CW universe. I think he's a really good John Constantine, and I think he'd be fine for.
You know what?
If there ever was a time, this is it for sure, because the whole multiverse stuff, and we've seen Ezra Miller's Flash with Grant Gustin's Flash on the Flash TV show.
That is crazy. And this, by the way, that's the corporate synergy I'm talking about when they're like trying to blur the lines of the corporate ladder or whatever they said before, right? Remove the view of the corporate structure so that things like that crossover can feel more natural and less forced. And I think that is ultimately good. And I think the reason I like Pierce Brosnan for this casting is more than just because I like him as James Bond. I think he brings, brings a good, cool voice to this.
He's never had good scripts. He's finally getting a good script here.
I hope he gets a good script, because you're right, Jeremy. That has always been my line with Pierce Brosnan. I mean, he's never got good scripts.
No matter what, like when we talk about this Black Adam project with the Rock attached, like he's been talking about a labor of love. He's been with this character 10+ years. They've handpicked the director. We've seen the tone of it when he explained at DC Fandom. We had the Photoshop kind of imagery, all placed together.
His boy, Boss
epic.
Logic,
right? Boss Logic. It all felt very epic. So I think this is the movie that's really going to set the standard for DC moving forward with Ann Sarnoff's new plan. So I'm super excited for this movie, no matter what. Like
absolutely.
with all other
stuff.
Everything
The Rock touches seems to turn to gold. So I hope that translates into the CFL. By the way, he's in talks to maybe merge with the CFL. Is completely off topic, but Canadian football important to me and about a handful of other people in this country, and it's in danger. And The Rock might help, which is actually a crazy kind of like didn't think I would ever hear that.
Right.
So let's move on from DC. Let's talk about something that's, I think, a little surprising. Sony is developing a Ghost of Tsushima movie. this is a report coming out of Deadline. Sony Pictures and PlayStation Productions are developing a film adaptation of the hugely successful action-adventure game Ghost of Tsushima with Chad Stahelski, director of John Wick, attached to direct.
Sick.
Amazing. I think that's a really good choice.
Yeah.
Because we'll be talking about John Wick in a second here. What's great about John Wick is its style, and not necessarily its scripts, but it builds a cool world, but it's clearly about the visuals and about the action.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And you're making a movie based on a video game, an action-adventure video game. It's going to be about the action. You want to see cool stuff. The interesting thing here is, though, it's a movie about... I guess we'll get... What is Ghost of Tsushima? It's the story of Ghost of Tsushima. Dan, do you want to explain it? Just a quick Cole's notes.
The Mongols are attacking Japan, and you play as a samurai trying to defend Japan.
Right.
And he has to kind of become a ninja.
But the thing that's interesting about that game is that it's like influenced by film, like by like actual samurai film.
Right.
So there's like Kurosawa mode. So I think it's interesting if you're going to make a movie. It's kind of like a copy of a copy of a copy at this point. Like I feel like if you want to be more like true to the idea, I think maybe you want to go with a different approach with the director, something more traditional Japanese. But maybe that doesn't sell. I don't know what the. I
don't know if it's copies necessarily. Like it's an homage, right? Like that's the whole point of the Kurosawa.
A derivative of a derivative, I guess.
But it's not necessarily a derivative because this is its own story. It has its own merits. It's not just taking what worked for the Kurosawa movies and replicating that. It's taking that and then building upon it. That's why it's not a copy to me.
Right.
Right. And so a movie is more of a copy in this sense, right? Because because the story Ghost of Tsushima is a very cinematic game.
Yeah.
The story as it stands could directly be translated into a movie, no problem. I'm not sure if that's the route they're going to go, but
it seems funny you should ask that because that seems to be the route that PlayStation Productions, which is this new like branch of Sony Pictures, is kind of taking. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. But the Cole's notes is that The Last of Us is going to be the show on HBO is going to largely follow the story of the first game. So,
which is probably for the best. Like that, we know it works. They know it works. Let them get their studio off the ground with stuff that is a known quantity first.
I'll just find the story now.
How long is this episode?
There's just lots of quotes. Neil Druckmann was recently interviewed by IGN at South by Southwest and revealed a few interesting things about the upcoming series. So this is a Jonathan Dornbush interview. So Neil Druckmann talking. We talked at length that season 1 of the show is going to be the first game, Druckmann explained, noting that for him and Craig Mazin, who's the director, our creator showrunner, the philosophical underpinnings of the story were the essential thing to get right about the adaptation. As far as the superficial things, like should a character wear the same plaid shirt or the same red shirt, they might not appear in it.
Sure.
That's way less important to us than getting the core of these people and the core of their journey, coming across. I think that's kind of funny because it feels like a little bit of a dig at some of these these fan castings, or when they announce these castings, they're like, "Well, they don't look exactly like the person from the video game." It's like, who cares? Like that's not the main takeaway, right? Like, I think they kind of get I like the kind of the tone he's going for here. Things sometimes stay pretty close. It's funny to see my dialogue there from the games in HBO scripts, and sometimes they deviate greatly to much better effect because we're dealing with a different medium. Everything about what he's saying here makes so much sense. It's the exact type of tact I wish I see more often in like online discourse. For example, in the game, there's so much action you have to train the player about mechanics. You have to worry. Yeah, you have to have more violence and more spectacle to some degree than you would need in a TV show because you don't need to train people on how to use a gun. So that's something that's that's been really different. And HBO has been great in pushing us to move more away from the hardcore action and focus more on the drama of the character. Some of my favorite episodes so far have deviated greatly from the story, and I can't wait for people to see it.
Love it.
And he also mentions here he's seen the first prosthetic for the clickers, and he said it looked like it was just awesome.
Yeah.
So
honestly, love to hear all of that. I hope they do kind of steer away from the action and lean into the characters, but also lean into the horror, right? Like, that's a huge part of that series, and like really putting yourself in the shoes of those characters in those moments.
I am already terrified just thinking about what those episodes are going to be like. Jeremy, any thoughts on this? I know you're a big Last of Us fan.
Yeah, no, I agree with Dan. I mean, I've been pretty high on this from the beginning, just based off who's involved, specifically Neil Druckmann. So and him just acknowledging, right, the differences in what you focus on based off the medium is, I just trust it even more. So super excited about that. And then even Ghost of Tsushima, like I haven't played that game, but I know like everyone loves it. And even I think Marcos is mentioning in the chat up there. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah.
Looks like he's got the game still in the plastic. I don't know if that's the PS. Is it only on PS4 or is it on PS5? Or is it like
it's on
an updated version?
PS4 and there is a PS5 upgraded version to come at some point.
So either way, open up the plastic, throw it in there. Play it.
It's absolutely worth playing. It's absolutely gorgeous on PS5. Like it's so like the amount of particle effects is just like doubled, which is already crazy because there's so many particle effects in that game.
Have you used the photo mode and taken?
I actually have. It's the only photo mode I've ever used in a video game.
Really?
Because I normally don't give a shit.
I think the only time I used it was Uncharted 4 because it was relatively new.
Such an amazing game. So speaking of Uncharted, we're not sure if that actually falls under PlayStation Productions. I think PlayStation Productions was announced after, and it doesn't. It's
the movie.
The movie. I think a lot of what they're kind of been distancing themselves from. Did
we ever talk about what Tom Holland said about the movie?
I feel like you mentioned it off air at one point.
Right. Yeah. Well, apparently it looks like he's getting ahead of it and just saying that he kind of messed up his whole take.
He felt like
the whole thing.
So I read that and I really thought about it. I thought it was really interesting. He basically comes out and says that like that movie he was doing a style of acting that was much more like in the vein of what help me out here, Mark Wahlberg would do. Because Mark Wahlberg was in the movie.
Which is funny because he's in the movie by himself.
Yeah, right. But he's talking about it, and he's like, stand here, look cool, right? And Tom Holland's saying he's like,
and he mentioned a stoic character,
right,
or whatever, which really isn't necessarily Nathan
That's
Drake.
not
like,
Nathan
He
Drake.
might have a cool picture of him in an action moment where he's swinging from a vine and taking out a guy and doing it in a very action hero way. But his whole thing is the kind of the joking, the quips, and kind of just stumbling across the action sequence.
Like the regular man, the everyday guy, right? That's kind of his thing. It's like he could be your dad if he like worked out a lot and like knew everything about like that's about archaeology. Like that's the kind of idea I think that they're going for. But I don't think that's what we're gonna get in the Uncharted movie, which is kind of funny. So I think they've been distancing themselves from that a little bit, but the idea is that PlayStation Productions actually has a whole ton of stuff in the works that they want to bring to different mediums. It's movies and television, obviously. And I'm just really excited to see what those things are. I mean, they've so far picked two of them, like the kind of the obvious ones. Ghost of Tsushima is an obvious translation into film, right? And The Last of Us is an obvious translation into television. Like it's just obvious.
It's not like you're going to do Ratchet and Clank.
I mean, you could.
Yeah, the kids movie. I mean, eventually, yes, but you're not gonna launch.
They
with
didn't.
That.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Well, that would be
Ratchet
animated though, too.
Yeah. They didn't. Did they not do a reboot of Ratchet and Clank?
Yeah, there was a
movie
release. I think Sony did.
Yeah, there was an animated film from like 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And a game that came along with it. So already did it, Dan. Okay, so. Any final thoughts on Ghost of Tsushima? I just think we don't know enough yet, but I just like the idea of having this character in this game brought to life. I just hope I just really hope it's like treated with the care that they treated the game, which they spent a lot of time thinking about making it feel true to Japanese culture and stuff like that. So
as far as we know,
well, that's what they said.
Yes,
like that's what they so I'm going to take them at their word. I don't know. I don't know enough about Japanese culture to know if they succeeded. Okay, so speaking of John Wick, the 4th and 5th films are moving forward. Dan, this must excite you. However, franchise writer Daryl Kolstad won't be part of the project. This is coming from IGN. Kolstad is the major architect of the John Wick universe, having solo writing credit for the first 2 movies and a shared credit with Shea Halton and Chris Collins and Mark Abrams on John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. The screenwriter revealed that the news in an interview with Collider, saying it wasn't his choice to leave the series, but did not want to wish anyone working on the movies ill will, saying he's still rooting for the series director Chad Stahelski, who we just talked about, and the franchise to succeed. I actually really liked his take on this. I'm not going to read his whole quote, but it is kind of, he basically said like, hey, I was too expensive to bring back. I kind of invented it, and I got my credits, and I'm like, it's good, but they chose to go with cheaper options essentially for 4 and 5.
Because the story isn't.
That's what I was kind of getting at before. Is like the story's not really the most important part.
But let's throw that over to Dan, who watched all 3, back to back to back, and he has his opinions based off. I think you said the second one was your least favorite or something.
Well,
like that?
I think that's more like the nature of how I watch these movies because I did watch all 3 back to back.
You just got you got sleepy at that one.
No, because they kind of all blend together. Like it's harder to like when you binge a show, it's harder to say, okay, so episode 2 ended here and 3 started here, right?
Yeah.
So I just think that episode 2 being in the middle of the others, I'm glossing over it in my head, not deliberately. But anyway,
like the 2 towers, right? Of course. Good.
Not at all.
Exactly, Jeremy. Exactly like the 2 towers.
Right,
I was thinking the same thing.
Fellowship, man.
I'm sure a lot of people do feel that way about 2 towers. But
yeah. Right. But hey, that's okay. People can be wrong, right, Dan?
Yeah, they often are, in my experience. Yeah, I mean, it's great. Like you guys said, the story of the John Wick stuff is really just framing devices. It's just like here's what's happening. Now go have fun.
It is a cool world, though.
Sure, it's a cool world. I think that
and then he starts blasting people in the head. So it's, whatever.
and realistically, the writers already set the stage. Like he's established the world, and now it's
like
other people's job
what's
to take
what's the whole meme from the beginning, right? It's like you killed John Wick's dog, like right. That's basically it. Like
and the thing that's weird about those movies is that like they take place basically back to back. In terms of like, there's no really time gap between them, so it's all takes place in like one evening or like 2 evenings basically.
You remember there was a point in time where I think the next John Wick and Matrix 4 or whatever were going to release on the same day.
yes, and then
I'm so upset that that's not happening. But like, what a cool thing.
There's just no way in the world that you would ever release 2 Keanu Reeves movies at the same
day. Okay, but
day.
Let's say that was happening, right? The ads are out, like the thing would be right. The event of the time period, right, where people would have FOMO of essentially is you buy the ticket for both and you do a back to back, whatever order you
imagine? A double feature, Matrix 4,
feature, Keanu.
That would be crazy. You know what? That would be crazy. And then to spice it up in between as a bit of an intermission, you would do
play some Cyberpunk.
No, watch Bill and Ted. Or play.
Right.
Speaking of games in their plastic casing, I have Cyberpunk sitting over on the shelf there. I am not touching that game until the official PS5.
I wish I could put the plastic back on my copy.
Yeah, well. And then we have Sean Tennyson in the chat as well, saying he's beyond excited for the Last of Us show.
Honestly,
good to see Sean. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah.
That show,
especially with Pedro Pascal, right?
Yeah, it's the Pascal-assance, guys. I mean, it's almost like it's not even
a
assance because he never went anywhere. You know,
we got what's her name as Ellie from Game of Thrones.
Bella Thorne.
Bella Ramsey.
Yeah, I don't know why was I saying Thorne for some reason. Is that her character in the?
I feel like Bella Thorne is like a musician or something.
Maybe. Okay, so let's talk about DC. We've talked about DC. We've talked about John Wick.
Let's do it again.
We talked about all the franchises. Now let's talk about Marvel for a second.
Great.
So. The most important thing here, and the biggest takeaway, is that Black Widow is coming to theaters and Disney Plus on the same day, very HBO Max inspired, on July 9th. So they did move back from the original release date, or not even original. They kept moving it, but this
can't wait.
July 9th with premiere access.
That's the joke, though, because we have to wait, right? We've been waiting this whole time.
Yeah, right. Can't wait. I won't wait.
You have to.
Yeah, well,
you have no choice.
I won't do it. So I was thinking, by the way, premiere access, it's generally been about $30.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's what they're saying is going to happen again. I don't think anyone's going to do it.
I think $30 is a lot to charge for Black Widow at home. I think
they're going to be like, fuck that, because you buy the streaming service, right? That has something, and you go along with it. Whatever's included is included. Why would you?
But they did this for
more
Mulan.
Money?
They did this for Mulan, and they did this for Maya and the Last Dragon.
Raya,
sorry, not
with
Maya.
An R.
Yeah,
sorry, my apologies, Daniel.
They did for Mulan in. What was it, like November of 2020 or something?
I don't know,
like,
but that movie sucks.
But it's free now on Disney Plus.
Yes,
right,
it is.
So
then, okay, with that knowledge, why are you going to be clamoring, right, to pay for Black Widow?
Here's the thing.
I actually had this conversation with my 7-year-old niece today
about
Raya and the Last Dragon, and I was like, if you just wait a couple months.
But they don't want to wait.
Yeah, I know they don't want to wait.
Wait, your 7-year-old niece is your 7-year-old niece is a twin, right?
Yeah.
Or no? Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they're all excited for it, but
they can form
just
sentences
cough up
now,
the money.
or they have been.
No, they can form entire thoughts now, man.
Oh man, crazy.
They can carry conversations now. It's nuts. They're getting.
The last time I saw the twins, they were just like in like they like the color or something. I feel like that was the.
Hey, they might still like
they still like the color.
Yeah,
right. But they stay inside the lines probably this time around.
They're much better. Actually, yeah. They drew some butterflies for me today, and it was great.
So Marcos in the chat says, "Am I the only one that has just lost interest in Black Widow at this point?" I somewhat feel this way. I feel this way a little bit.
I feel this way as well, but like nothing crazy has been essentially.
Hey, Jeremy, the butts matter. Okay?
No. Hey, I mean, nothing has essentially been spoiled from this movie.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, if you think of Black Widow movie, what do you think of? For me, I think of her flying through the air with a bunch of debris, and that's it.
The scissor kick. It's the scissor kick thing where she jumps on top of their head and
does a
spin.
spinorama.
Yeah, it's this, which is an actual move apparently.
But that's the point. It's like basically nothing of this movie has been spoiled. So it's when it comes, it comes. And but we're all in agreement that like at the time, are you going to be willing to shell out some more cash for this? So we'll have to wait and see.
So speaking of Premier Access, can I just say I think I didn't give it credit for being as clever of a name as I think it is, because it's like it has like multiple meanings, because it's like Premier Access because you get to see it when it premieres, right? But it's also like a premium service because you have to pay more, so it's Premier. So I think it is actually a good name for it because it's like kind of
well, it's not like they could do Disney Plus. So
yeah, well, that's true. But what's fascinating is that they're continuing to use this model, which I think speaks volumes. The streaming service is kind of, we talked about, it's the streaming wars, begun the streaming wars have. And so when you're talking about Black Widow coming to Disney Plus, it's something that they obviously didn't want to do because they've been delaying that for a long, long time. They can't keep delaying because we're going to talk about this in a second. They have a whole slate of movies that if they delay one, there's a whole domino effect they need to avoid, right? So I think they have something good on their hands.
I think I agree with that since we haven't been spoiled and all that stuff.
Right.
But it's also like it's their first, not first, but I guess one of the original Avengers, main movie.
Different than Raya and Milan. It's a big
Let's not just throw it away to the streaming services, quote unquote or whatever. Let's give this its traditional due when the time is right. Because I think Black Widow and that character and this whole universe kind of deserves that. So I'm all on board with that.
Here's a question. I think this is the same question that's being asked in a different way. Like if it's an Avengers movie, are you paying that $30?
Absolutely. And I'm gonna here's
that's the whole.
I'm gonna pay the $30 for if it's $30.
Already deciding. Yeah. Okay.
We share the Disney Plus account.
Yeah.
I'm gonna we'll all be able to watch it for that one flat rate of $30, and I'll take it out of the Patreon.
That's all fun. Fair, but Daniel's onto something there though. Is that we're gonna see in terms of the streaming shows, right? Like what people generally get excited for, and it is those Avengers movies, right?
Yeah.
Those dominate pop culture and the conversation every single time. So now with these TV shows, right, they are essentially, no matter what, right, like without Kevin Feige's decision making, right, like he probably wouldn't have done these TV shows, right, if it was up to him, right? We know how he kind of feels about that, but he was basically forced by now his name is coming back, Bob Iger. Right, which is his whole strategy.
Yes,
and
Bob Chapek, who's the new head of
So
Bob's.
So I just feel like we just have to kind of wait and see at the end of this whole first phase of these TV shows, and we can kind of measure them at that point. But for now, I'm not like, I don't know what the conversation is anymore. But I'm not like super excited. I haven't watched Winter Soldier yet. Like that's my favorite of one of my favorites of the Marvel movies.
Oh, it's so
but I haven't been chomping at the bit to just really dive into that show. Maybe I will once a bunch of episodes are available. But
I think
I want to have a conversation about that show for sure once I get around to it.
With Falcon and the Winter Soldier so far, my thoughts would be I think it probably behooves you to watch it in one fell swoop. There's 8 episodes. I mean, obviously, we were talking about a 4-hour movie. I think this is or that's not even 8 episodes. I don't even think there's 8. I think there's only like 7 or 6 or something like that. But
yeah, these Marvel shows are relatively around like 6 hours or whatever, basically. Yeah. In total is what it's demanded.
So I feel like based off what I've seen so far, I think that might be the case. But we can talk about it more once more of us have seen it. Right. So the chat here is having interesting conversation about about the pricing for these things, like, right? Like, so Marcos mentions here, I don't have an exact number, but I also read that Disney Plus is raising their prices. Sean Tennyson mentions my price went up from $6.99 to $7.99. So there is, and Netflix always keeps raising their prices. There is a steady creep all the time of the prices for these things going up, and then meanwhile Disney's also kind of double dipping with the Premier Access thing. So where's that, Dan? We were talking about this the other day with like something else, I don't remember, but that like supply and demand, like where do those meet? Like how much, and maybe that's the price sensitivity, actually, not supply and demand, but yes, price sensitivity. Like what price is too much? Like what, how much would you pay for Disney Plus if there was no Premier Access for Black Widow? Would you pay $11.99, $12.99, $15.99, $20.99? Like how much would you go to before that becomes unreasonable or unrealistic? I don't know.
It's hard to say, but Disney Plus is going to be probably
they'll
like
find
the
out.
Trendsetter, right?
They'll
like
definitely find out.
What I mean to say is like they're probably the one streaming service that within this year, let's say within 2021, they'll probably have the most value for your buck within that service.
It's hard to argue with how much stuff Netflix comes.
I know it's tight, but and Amazon's making moves too. But that's what I would.
Amazon feels like it was in a position to really like combat Netflix more directly, but is now, I feel like now kind of stepped back.
Here's the way I would think about it as it relates to Amazon is that it's not their core business. It's just an add-on, right? Like whereas and Disney too as well, right? So Netflix, this is all they do.
To be fair, for Disney, they've now said multiple times that Disney Plus is the future of Disney.
HBO Max is the future
of
thing, right? So it's more and more. I mean, none of these things, I can't imagine that any of them are profitable or sustainable when they start. So they probably go with those. It's easy access, low price, get people in, and then slowly creep it up. It kind of makes sense.
Well, I mean, I understand like from hey, we're making all these shows. It costs money. We need to and also like inflation. So we're gonna the price are gonna go up over time. But like it's often the prices go up a lot faster and higher than they probably should. Yeah. And we're just this is brought up. This is not by far not a unique idea, but this idea that we're getting close to a point where like we'll just be paying the same amount of money we were paying for cable services, but it's just going to be in like 4 different streaming services. It's like and like
we kind of are, and then you have to pare it down. Like you have to pare it down to like 3 or 4 max.
And this is why you're also, and then you have like on the same kind of side of the coin you have, and it's, by the way, this is an agree or disagree segment, which is literally just one line. Netflix is cracking down on password sharing, and it's obviously we all disagree with that because we all share passwords, but it's the inevitable corporate, like it's just where you're going to get to in a society where money is the most important thing. They're just going to start closing loopholes, and they've been Netflix. The worst thing about the Netflix thing, though, it's so insidious. They've known it was going on for so long, and they knew that, hey, my parents can share their because the one that I use is my parents' Netflix. That I can use it, my sister can use it, my brother can use it, they can use it, and then all of a sudden you can't share passwords anymore. Now you need to buy it yourself because they knew it was there. They even got you invested, and now you're going to be, have less access. I don't know how much like they can really get away with without there being like a big backlash.
Stop password sharing. Like it's got to be within reason. Like limit it to like maybe 3 users per account or something like that, right? Like
I don't know. I mean, like for now you can have almost, I don't know how many, but there's like a 5.
There's a family plan or something like that.
Yeah, like 5. But like, why would you create different why would you have different users on a streaming service if you didn't expect multiple people to be using it? Like I just think it's a little bit greasy, but not surprising. So anyway, back to Black Widow here for a second. Here's the slate of Marvel content that's coming this year and into next year. So Black Widow, July 9th. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, September 3rd. Eternals, November 5th. Those are so close together. That's so crazy. Spider-Man No Way Home, December 17th. That's even closer. And then Thor, Love and Thunder is February 11th, 2022. Like these are like really close together, and there's shows in the works. So like we haven't got there too. By the way, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, March, 1 month. These are basically 1.5 months apart. Yep. It's actually insane. Like that is maybe too much for the record. We went a whole year without Marvel movies, and now we're gonna get like 5 in the span of like 6 months.
All for it. Let's just do it.
So and then on the Disney Plus side, we have obviously WandaVision that dropped on January, Falcon and the Winter Soldier just released, and then Loki again on June 11th. So there's going to be a short break between Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki again, which I'm most excited, by the way. I think Loki's the one that's most interesting for me.
It's the wild card,
yeah. And then the What If series, which is coming in summer, quote unquote, 2021. Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, and She-Hulk are either later 2021 or 2022. we're getting into a world where there's going to be a Marvel thing every week, basically. Whether it's a show dropping on the Friday, or it's a new movie dropping on the Thursday, or it's like in between. I think we're very close to that. It feels like almost too much, but then you look over on the Star Wars side, then they announce like 10 shows too. So it's like, I don't know.
I mean, not to comment on the Star Wars side of things, because that may be too much for me, but that's a me thing. For Marvel, I don't think it can be too much. Like if you look at the comic book world, there's a ton of comic books. There's a million different characters, and there are fans for them.
Yes, but
bringing that to movies and TV makes a ton of sense, as long as they put the same sort of effort into these Marvel properties as they have in the others in the past. Like, why not have it?
Well, I guess like the one argument you could make is that like what you mentioned about comics is a part of the reason that getting into comics is challenging. It's difficult because there's so much, right? So you risk like alienating the casual fan, I think, a little bit. Where like, hey, we're referencing this thing in Moon Knight you didn't see because of course you didn't fucking watch Moon Knight. Because you're just a casual Marvel fan, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's a risk.
Marvel and Disney are in a unique position to marry those two concepts, though, right? Because this like one of the biggest IPs in the world, right?
Yeah.
Everybody watches the Avengers movies for the most part, and everybody's into Marvel stuff. So like, it's a way to get some of these more obscure characters some traction too.
Listen, I like the ability to explore the smaller characters. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying maybe I don't know if they necessarily need to be this like condensed, this dense in the sense that like there's so much over a short amount of time that feels like I don't know, how do you even have time to process everything?
And a lot of it is like you mentioned earlier, though, there was a full year without Marvel movies, and it's not like people weren't working on these in some fashion, right?
Well, yeah, that's true, and you got to keep the visual art studios open and working. I mean, what's interesting is that like, Avengers is huge because it was the #1 worldwide Avengers Endgame, the biggest movie in movie history until very recently. Last week or the week before, Disney re-released Avatar in China, and it made back the difference that was like and now it's back to being the #1 over all time. But the thing is that when Avatar came out, it was a Fox property, and now it's also a Disney property. So it's like it feels like I'm being manipulated here, like. It's Disney like, oh no, Avatar's the biggest one, and then they'll re-release Endgame, and then it'll be the biggest one again, and then like it'll go back and forth. It's just an excuse for them to make a bunch of money over time for a pointless award of being the highest-grossing film of all time.
I don't know that there is an award.
There is no, but it's like just something that like
it's not necessarily pointless.
Rights, it is kind of pointless, like that, because ultimately the true highest-earning movie of all time is Gone with the Wind, right? It's not even close. It's like it's not even close if you what's the word? Help me out here.
You normalize for today, like for inflation and such, that more people went to that movie, and if they were paying today's prices, they would have outperformed those other movies.
Right. So it is kind of silly. Like we talk about it all the time, and we have to always couch it in in today's dollars or whatever. So it's ultimately meaningless, but it is right. Just bragging rights is kind of fun to talk about. Does anything off this slate of Marvel properties jump out at you as something you're like, really excited about?
Jeremy?
Like I think I've said from the beginning, like since Endgame, that this whole phase is not as exciting to me as the other phases of the MCU, specifically with the television, and like even when we kind of bring back that conversation of Kevin Feige kind of signing on to these shows because of Bob Iger and just getting these obscure characters out there. I think that's all cool. I think that benefits the hardcore fan. But I think in terms of like WandaVision, like we've got our answer as to what these shows are and what the expectations are.
Well,
because a lot of the expectations were being blown up, right? To the point to where the showrunners were even saying like, if you have those expectations, like you're going to be let down. So I think that perfectly encapsulates. I agree. I think that's another conversation. But for me, if I'm just kind of speeding through, that encapsulates my whole feeling on these series as a whole. But in terms of the movies, right, which we've always kind of been in tune for and kind of excited for, I've always been excited for Shang-Chi. I think that's going to be my favorite of all of them. For sure. I could care less for Thor.
Really?
Spider-Man, I'm excited for, but we've been spoiled already. It's going to be live action Spider-Verse. And then Doctor Strange,
coming off of WandaVision,
I've always been excited for Doctor Strange because look at the title, Multiverse of Madness, and then you see WandaVision and what she's capable of and how she's progressed as a character, which is what I feel like that story or that show has kind of service, which I'm very thankful for. I feel like it fleshed out or made believable, Vision and WandaVision's relationship.
Yep.
If anything.
Well, just because the movies gave it so little time, like
they were so quick, right? But then you watch that series, and then you watch like those Marvel like Legends, series about each character, and it's like, holy cow, like you can just extrapolate so quickly off all these highlights from Avengers Age of Ultron and on, and it just means so much more.
I think it's so funny that Age of Ultron keeps being this touchstone for so many other parts of the this modern MCU. Like we keep coming back of all the movies that you would think to come back to. It seems to be that we keep coming back to Age of Ultron.
But it makes sense because those two characters, especially with WandaVision, right? They were birthed there. That's exactly where they came from.
I just remember when that is fascinating too when you think about it, because it like this whole the mutants are coming. The mutants are coming. It's like this whole thing that we've been kind of like. At some point, we're gonna get an announcement, and we're gonna find out who the new mutants are, like what they cast, who's gonna be playing Wolverine, and all that kind of exciting stuff. But
the fans have jumped the gun though on that.
Have they?
I think we're guilty of that for sure.
They decided on who.
But also with WandaVision, right? With that one particular thing in terms of Quicksilver, it was just like it ended up being nothing, right? Which kind of encapsulates the whole thing.
We haven't talked about the whole series yet, and I apologize. I wanted to do that, but that is my biggest gripe with that show. I think it's
which is what I'm talking about.
I think it's bullshit that they did that for the record. Like I think it's really stupid what they did with Quicksilver, and I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it.
Credit to Dan though. Dan was right.
Yeah, I was, and but in the worst way,
Yeah,
you're right, but like great, you predicted the end of the world, but great, it's the end of the world now. That's obviously a little melodramatic.
Well, Daniel, were you satisfied kind of with that whole outcome, even though you called it, so and so?
Well, I mean, satisfied because I was proven right, sure, but
right, but it always feels good.
No, I mean, I agree with you. Like from a story perspective, that's disappointing. Definitely.
Yeah.
The way that they handled things.
I'm
trying to avoid spoilers here.
It feels tone deaf too. I just like I don't know. I think when we've seen more
conversations, a form of a spoiler for WandaVision, by the way.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it was a huge show. A lot of people have seen it, especially our audience, but I'm not going to assume. So if you haven't, definitely give it a watch. I think it's definitely worth watching. What I would like to do is in a future episode, just catch up on what's happening on Marvel television.
Yeah.
And just because maybe we're like halfway through Falcon Winter Soldier, we can kind of check in. Just because I know, Jeremy, you haven't seen the second episode. I'll just say about the second episode.
I haven't seen any of it.
You haven't seen any of it. Okay, so my just quick thoughts so far on Falcon Winter Soldier is it's very tonally consistent with the Winter Soldier.
Yep.
But I think it's all over the place. It's a little overstuffed, I think, in certain places, and a little incoherent. But overall, it's pretty entertaining. I think the effects could be a little bit better, but the action's really good. The action's excellent, and so I really like that. So, but. And some of the quiet moments, especially in episode 1, I really enjoyed as well. So I'm excited about more of that stuff. Ultimately, all the Marvel stuff for me is about the more quiet moments than it is more about the action. Like the movies feel like more like the big action stuff, and this feels more like I'm okay with having like a counselor scene. It works for me. That's like 20 minutes long. Fuck yeah, sure. Okay, let's move on. Dan, we have to talk about Game of Thrones. I know this episode's going long, by the way, but I just knew it was going to be. So Game of Thrones, George R. Martin has signed a 5-year deal. Jeremy, if you want to take a nap or go make a drink and come back, maybe make some snacks.
Likes Game of Thrones.
I know, I'm just.
No, it's definitely cool for sure. But I definitely like a lot of our viewers. I'm sure they're very curious to see what you and Daniel have to think.
Well,
about
yeah,
this.
and you didn't break it down weekly. We were very invested in it, right?
Yeah, so I just think it's fascinating that Georgia is so unhealthy, and I just feel like he might not last the 5 years. We've even talked about the books. It's like he said they're going to be out, and it's like have the books come out? I don't think so.
No, they haven't. They have not. He said he had a really productive year apparently this year working on Winds of Winter, right? Is that
that's good?
Yeah, Winds of Winter. It's still
that's good.
Winds of Winter is still slated to come out 2021.
That's the final book?
No, it's the 6th book.
There's still another one.
What do you mean the 6th book? Is there 8? Is there 7?
Is there 6? It's unclear how many there will be. Everyone assumes there'll be 7. George R. Martin has said he's hinted at there being 7, but he's also said you know what? If there's more story and I get to
he's
the
not
end
going
of
to be around long enough.
If these books come out, if they they finally come out, will you hashtag redo the 8th season of Game of Thrones?
You can't redo it. There's just you can't go back. You can't go back. But that is Jeremy. That's so funny you bring that up because I was thinking about that same thing.
I love that question.
But you
I think it's just great.
You can't do it. It's impossible to do. But I know
it's
definitely
a harder feat, I think, than the Snyder cut for sure.
Because there's no footage. You'd have to go and make it from scratch.
You'd have to restart, get all the actors back. Right.
It's impossible. And some of them are way bigger now than they were before. So to get them back on the
contracts.
And the funny thing is though, like that the actors would be like, cool, we can do this this time. But it would be weird.
And then it's about HBO Max, right? Which is the future.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys, let's go.
Okay, so you mentioned 5 years, Jeremy. George R. R. Martin signs a 5-year deal with HBO. This is coming from Entertainment
How old is
Weekly.
he right now?
I don't know.
Daniel, you don't know. Come on.
I don't know. I don't do that kind of like. You guys know me.
Hey, age is just a number, Jeremy. Age is just a number.
I don't know. I mean, people have been saying that he's unhealthy for a while, but he's still going. And
he also
still ready.
really.
I'm not worried about that.
I'm not. It's more so of a joke, just because I feel like we haven't really seen anything in since the get go of like what has been promised or like what they said they're gonna do.
He's he's working on Elden Ring. Is that game he's working on with the Dead Souls guys or whatever, Dark Souls guys. There's always news of a George R. R. Martin being involved in some other project. Yeah. He's just really busy. So the famously not at all busy Game of Thrones creator has signed a deal with with HBO to develop new shows for the network and its streaming service HBO Max for 5 years. EW has confirmed. The news comes amid reports that HBO is developing all the Game of Thrones prequels. All of the Game of Thrones prequels, intent on expand. I think, by the way, the all here is kind of more like editorializing. He's saying like every sequel you can think of is being worked on.
So,
right?
Yeah. So maybe the better word would be each. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think if it was actually all of them, I think he would say each of them. But I think in this case, he's saying
it is all
it's
of
kind
them.
Of being,
let's
he's being
be
kind of
clear here. Game of Thrones,
there's
worldwide phenomenon, and when we're talking about PR and business strategies and whatnot. And we know that there's
cornerstone
X amount of spin-offs, whatever. Yeah. It's definitely insane. It's too much. But I will say, if they are good,
6, by the way.
That's too
6
much.
projects.
If they are good, then sweet. For sure.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
but that's not. But Jerry,
awesome.
That's true with everyone.
But
with every single one of these.
It's like there's 6 of them. There's no way that you're gonna get the same type of enjoyment, or you know what I mean? Like it was almost like this unique experience.
I don't think. Yeah, Jeremy, you're right, because what we saw with Game of Thrones was the end of an era for television. It was the weekly appointment viewing, all at the same time. That is basically gone away, and it bridged the gap between old television, because it was around for 10 years, give or take. And it bridged the gap between old television and what we call the golden age of television, and then now into this kind of the streaming war stuff. So it is fascinating, because even when at the end of of Game of Thrones run, HBO Max wasn't a thing yet, and there was HBO Now and HBO Go, and like this is what I talk about diluting the HBO brand. It's so confusing. So they collapsed all those. It's now just HBO and HBO Max. But the fact that there's a distinction between HBO and HBO Max in and of itself is confusing. So we talk about like needing content, and content being that kind of like the C word, the new C word, because like actual creators seem to hate the term content. It feels like it devalues their work, which I think is fair. It's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It just it's monolithic in the sense that it just turns everything into one thing. Not monolithic. What's the word I'm looking for? Mono something.
I'm not sure what you're searching for there, but what to me what it is using the word content instead of whatever alternative
film, television
means
show.
That it doesn't matter what the artist is producing, right? It just needs to be something.
It has to fit this. Could be anything.
We have a content shaped hole in our streaming service, and we need you to fill it.
We're gonna set up a camera on a street, and it's just gonna point that direction, and that's content, right? Yeah. It's the same. That is the same as a full blockbuster film.
It's not necessarily, that's what the term evokes.
Right. Exactly. Which is why I think people bristle at it. So anyway,
that's happening everywhere, including in conversations we had before.
So what's the most important IP right now at HBO? It's Game of Thrones, and we've been talking about this for a while. This idea that it might be too late, like they may let it sit too long. I don't know if that's true. We don't know yet, because the actual project that's in development isn't done yet. We don't know what the actual reception is going to be, and if it sucks, that's certainly going to be bad for the brand and not bad for the brand, again, kind of corporate speak, but like it might deflate the balloon a little bit.
But even at the end of the day, right, with 6, it's like you're definitely, no matter what, you're diluting it. aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
so that's why it's so weird that they would sign off on it.
It depends on what the 6 are.
I said that from the beginning. If they're good, but then I still go back to the number like 6, like Jeremy, 6 of them, so 6 TV shows.
Jeremy, none of them have been greenlit yet. Only one of them has. We don't know which ones are actually going to go into development, but they're all being workshopped. This is very similar to, by the way, to their previous. This is how they came to House of the Dragon. There was a whole bunch of ideas that they had, and they would kind of had like a Dragon's Den. Ooh, good little reference there. A Dragon's Den-esque Shark Tank, I think, for the States type kind of like showdown.
Have you guys watched those shows, by the way?
I've seen episodes. They're okay.
Not my style.
They're okay, and it's not my style either. But anyway, so that's interesting. And then so there's a funny line. I
just pictured the three of us at Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. Like, I don't know what we're pitching.
Maybe it's the podcast,
but like
Babble.
I'm like we're failing. Like the dramatic music is playing. The
sweating. We're sweating. yeah. It's doing
everyone's
that cut
saying,
where it's just
and everyone's saying for that reason I'm out.
And it's that cut where it's just like a stern face us and just you mentioned dramatic music. But like they're like it's just people staring at each other for some reason. I always do that. Drives me nuts. So funny. So here's the actual projects in the work, and I think there's this quote I was mentioning that I don't have, but I don't.
Dunkin' Egg, basically, the best one yet.
What's the best? What's the sweet spot in terms of numbers? And he's like it's I don't know. It's more than 1, but less than 10. And the reason that they like that the number 10 is funny is because it's obviously silly. Like the number 10 is so many, like it's way too many. But it's also the amount of shows that Disney announced for Marvel.
Okay, wait, I gotta know. Are any of the writers? What are the writers from the main show? Where are they in these?
They are not involved. They have moved.
Okay, this is crazy.
Benioff and Weiss are no longer involved. Remember, they were going to make that. They originally were going to make that show about the Confederacy, or it was like the American Civil War, basically. And then it was called Confederate. There was a bunch of backlash that never got made. Then they were attached to Star Wars. They were going to make a Star Wars movie for a while. That I don't think they're making that movie anymore either.
I'm sorry. Like the cast of Game of Thrones was phenomenal.
So you're saying they dropped the ball, is what you're getting at. You feel like those creators dropped the ball.
The cast was just so good.
It's hard to capture that
again. And now you're gonna have new casts.
Yeah,
you have 6 of them.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. So here are the projects. Okay. So right now we have House of the Dragon. I'm just going to read from this article from James Hibbard here from the Hollywood Reporter, because he did the work to kind of recap, to keep this straight in our brains and to hopefully help keep it straight for our listeners as well. So House of the Dragon. This is the one of the shows that's definitely happening, okay, because it's in production. Set 300 years before the events of Game of Thrones.
Perfect.
House of the
Forget
Dragon.
all of that stuff then.
Are people actually going to call the show Hotted at some point?
I would read that as Hot D.
House of the Dragon, Hot D. That's pretty. Hot D is even.
Wait. Did you come up with that? Or
no. This is the editorializing from.
Okay.
So anyway, so he's like, are people really going to call this Hot D? I think they will, because it's catchy. Hot D is fucking hilarious.
I mean, look, if we're gonna stick, because nobody called Game of Thrones God, they called it GOT. So if we're gonna stick with it, it'd be
HOT. House.
HOD maybe. You drop the T. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Figure something out.
Yeah. Anyway, it tells the story of the House Targaryen back when Daenerys' ancestors ruled Westeros. The events in the show will eventually lead into the famed Dance of the Dragons, the Targaryen Civil War. The series stars Olivia Cook, Emma Darcy, Patty Considine, Matt Smith. Here's which character each actor is playing, and is from showrunners Ryan Condal or Connolly, from Colony, the show Colony. I thought that was a pronunciation guide for a second. and Miguel Sapochnik, who directed some of the first episodes of Game of Thrones, like Battle of the Bastards.
That's good.
He is good. He's actually one of the best Game of Thrones directors that they had. Like all the Game of Thrones prequels in the works, this project is executive produced by saga author George R.R. Martin, who is working closely with the writers on each idea. House of the Dragon will film in England, unlike Game of Thrones, which was based in Northern Ireland, and is expected to start production in April. The first season is 10 episodes, and it has a full season order, and is expected to drop in first. This is the first one. It's coming. It's in production, going into production right now. Not going to come out until 2022. All right. Game of Thrones ended in 2019. That'll be 3 years later. So Yeah.
So for me being an outside kind of thing. So at this point in time, we're gonna dive into the show.
Yeah.
Dragons aren't going to be built up. They're going to be
dragons
established.
Are going to be huge. Dragons are going to be everywhere.
So 300 years previous to the events of Game of Thrones is when Aegon lands for the first time. So it'll be Aegon and his sisters, including their 3 dragons. So Balerion the Black Dread, which is the largest dragon Westeros had ever seen.
So no matter what, this is cool as fuck. Because
that's right.
And
because
it's going to get cooler.
They're going to be established. You're not going to be learning about dragons. They're going to be established. They're going to be powerhouses.
Right. They know how to make them with CG now. You don't have to remake that. Yeah.
Correct.
What's cool about this for me, aside from Aegon's conquest and seeing the dragons, and obviously the dance of the dragons itself, is at the beginning we'll also hear probably more details of the Doom of Valyria. Ooh. Which is one of the big mysteries, right? That's sort of the Atlantis myth of that
That
world.
was one of the prequels that was in development. I think it might have been the one that got the
Atlantis. You're talking about water. You're talking about underwater.
Sorry?
You're talking about underwater then?
No, it's similar story.
Well, it's the Atlantis myth, right? So Atlantis sinks into the sea. It's a great cataclysm. But before Atlantis was a very advanced civilization. This is part of the myth, right? So in some versions of the myth, they're struck down for their hubris, whatever. Similar story with the Valyrians. They were a very advanced society, 1 million dragons, of course. The idea is that there are a bunch of houses that were competing, like very political, like Game of Thrones. But the Targaryens were one of like the lower branched houses. They chose to leave Valyria because Diana the Dreamer had a vision of the Doom of Valyria ahead of time. So Aegon and his sisters went further west than anybody else from Valyria had before, and they founded Dragonstone, and then eventually conquered Westeros.
Okay, so based off your knowledge, how do you see this series playing out? What is the purpose? How does it start? How does it end? What are your expectations?
So it's going to start, like I said, with Aegon's conquest. Them leaving, they will have left Valyria at that point. They probably either will be landing on Dragonstone or already have landed on Dragonstone and will be moving into Westeros. So I think that's where it starts. That's where it has to start, given the timeline. The fact that it evolves into Dance of the Dragons, though, that's generations. So that means that this show, either they want many seasons out of it, so it's going to be sort of like a Targaryen dynasty TV show, or it's going to move real quick with like time jumps and stuff like that, which I don't think would be a great way to, approach this.
But doesn't it have to be? Isn't this the main kind of driving force of Game of Thrones moving forward? Being the first show.
Not necessarily. I mean,
No?
if all 6 get the green light, like who knows, right? None of them. They're all prequels, to my understanding. I don't think any of them are about moving forward in Westeros. It's not about what's Arya doing now or anything like that.
No, not those characters. But what is the major event that's before all of that? Like that, what is it building up to?
Before all of which? Sorry. I'm not understanding
the events of the main kind of show, right? The main timeline.
So there's a few. This is one of the big ones. When Aegon takes over, when Aegon conquers Westeros, that's when the Targaryen dynasty is introduced.
Okay.
Before that, they really were 7 different kingdoms. When Aegon comes to Westeros, that's the first time they're all consolidated into 6 of them are consolidated into one. So that's a huge event in Westerosi history. Another huge event that leads into the Game of Thrones show is Robert's Rebellion. That's talked about quite a bit. That's just one. That's not even a full generation before the events of Game of Thrones, right? Or about a generation before. So that I think would be explored at some point. And then the Dunk and Egg stuff, which is later on the list. The Dunk and Egg stuff, they're little novellas, but they're pieces of Westerosi history. The analogy I would always use is that Sir Duncan the Tall, is kind of like Westeros's Forrest Gump. He's just like wandering around and ends up in the right place at the right time and like little pieces of history. So there's a lot of stuff from the Dunk and Egg project that will also be leading into Game of Thrones.
So connective tissue.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
So is Dunk and Egg the most important project listed here?
Importance is hard.
I don't know.
Hard to define. Let's list the projects first.
Let's list the projects.
Okay,
so we have
Let's go.
House of the Dragon,
which is obviously very important. It's going to establish.
That one's huge. And I feel like I remember hearing about this, and I don't. My memory's not great right now. Maybe I smoked too much weed. But is that one going to be animated?
No. There's a different
one
that's
going to be animated.
One. This is
crazy.
This is live action, and the craziest part about the whole thing is there was another series that already has a pilot that was shot and seen and then passed on. HBO.
Really?
That's out there.
That was the Naomi Watts one?
Yeah, the Naomi Watts one.
So that was meant to be the Long Night. So that was 1,000 years before Game of Thrones. And that was
so what do you mean passed on? That's not going to be...
They made a pilot for that, and they didn't like it, and they're not making that show anymore.
Okay, so it's erased, basically.
It's basically erased. And what's funny...
Naomi Watts?
Naomi Watts was supposed to star in that show.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah, it is upsetting. It's really, and the thing is, like,
she's legendary.
She is, yeah.
She's in Star Wars. She's in the last movie. You'll blink and you'll miss her, but she's in it. Okay, so there's Dunk and Egg.
Can I just say one thing about House of the Dragon before we move on?
Yes, please. Wait. Everyone is clamoring for Dave to discuss this world.
Just one more thing before you move on. One more thing.
You can say whatever you want right now.
I was everything I said previously about House of the Dragon. I was assuming that it was the animated one, right? Because I thought it would be impossible to do Dance of the Dragons without it.
No.
They're doing this.
We're getting dragons.
In that case,
we're getting fire-breathing dragons here. We're getting many of them.
If that's the reality, then it's almost like forget these other projects because that's all that matters. That's huge.
See, so then that's the thing. It's House of Dragons is what we buy into.
Already saying it's not called that. It's called House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon. Okay. Wait, a singular dragon?
It's called. They're the House of the Dragon. Yes. That's their sigil. So they're the House of the Dragon.
Okay.
Right.
Because of Daenerys, right?
The same way the Starks are the houses of the direwolf.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So Dunk and Egg is going to be kind of that like out of the left field, like
it's going to be the
very different.
Yeah.
Probably humorous.
I
but
want
really
it to
incorporate all of the tropes of the Game of Thrones world and really just bring fans in.
Do you think it's going to be a lot like the Arya and the Hound stuff that we got? Like
it's a very similar dynamic.
Which is fantastic.
Jeremy, I've never seen you this excited about Game of Thrones before. We should get you on the show when it's coming.
You know what? I'm trying to spin everything very positively because I'm sick of the negativity that I see recently. I'm just done with it. I don't.
You know what, Jeremy? I like it. I like the side of you. I want to see more of it. I
just don't care about people's hot takes. I just fuck you. Like,
but your hot takes are that everything's positive. That's just as hot. So maybe being positive is a cold take.
Let's be real. Like, we're capitalizing off the Game of Thrones, phenomenon. That's all good, right? You hear 6. That's too many.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
It's a whole roller coaster.
Sure. But Daniel's saying House of Dragon. That's gonna lead us in. Okay, I'm in. Let's go. Right.
You're slightly disappointed by the Naomi Watts news. A little bit. That's a little bit of a dip there,
I mean,
but you're back
phenomenal
up.
actress, legendary. Right. Like that sucks. Like let's get her in somehow. But okay, not right now. Sure. Dunk and Egg, clearly gonna be. It sounds comedic from the get go.
Well, yeah.
Who cares, right? But they're gonna bring people who didn't buy into House of Dragons. So
you're saying
I'm
it wrong
down
again,
for this shit. I'm down for this shit. You know what I mean?
So
I think they know what they're doing, right? But it sucks that we know that there's 6 because it's like, okay, you have a formula,
right?
Maybe we'll buy into it. Yet. We probably will. But House of Dragon, we're all sold. Let's go. Let's do it. Dunk and Egg is going to be that kind of, on the other side of things, really kind of dissecting everything and being probably comedic. I imagine.
Here's what I would say for Dunk and Egg. That one is kind of made more as like a love letter to fans more than it like to the book.
That's
fans,
why I feel like it's going to be comedic. I just feel like with that name itself, it's gonna bring the laughs, but it's gonna earn it.
However, for me as a book reader, there's a ton of mystery around the Dunk and Egg stuff. Insofar as it relates to the tragedy at Summerhall. And for them to explore that in the show, that hasn't been explored in the books. So you got to remember, the Dunk and Egg series is a series of novellas. Right. There's meant to be 12 of them.
Called The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Knight, and The Mystery Knight.
Yeah, so there's meant to be 12 of these, and only 3 have been released so far. So there's a lot of story there, too.
There's
in
terms
of
the fact you're not going to get 12. You're not getting 12 of them.
Let's rewind. What did you just say about who?
It's based on novellas. It's based on
I know that part. Say the other part.
Okay, so
the mystery of the tragedy at Summerhall.
Right.
Okay, so Summerhall will be the heart of Dunk and Egg.
it'll be the crux. It'll be the climax. It'll be your
Correct.
episode 9.
So let's keep this conversation going. Yep. What the fuck is Nymeria project?
The Nymeria.
Nymeria. Let's go. Let's break it down for me.
The Nymeria project. Okay, Dan, do you want me to read this blurb first?
Sure.
This revolves around the warrior queen Nymeria, a reversed. Sorry, not reversed.
Okay. I'm already in. You said warrior queen.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. I'll give you Jeremy here. Let me give you my version of
Daniel. I need to hear from Daniel.
Nymeria story. So Nymeria is the queen of the Rhoynar. They come from an area in Essos, which is like on the fringes of the Dothraki Sea.
Okay.
So
Nice.
they eventually left their area of Essos. This is long before Game of Thrones.
And Dan, you're losing him. You're losing him.
He's not losing me. He's gonna tell me a certain character that I'm gonna be very invested in.
Right.
Or,
yep. Yeah.
okay.
I was trying to jump to that.
I doubt it because their story relates very closely with Dorne, and Dorne was not handled very well in this series. So nobody's
redemption. Let's go.
But Jeremy, who is the character from Dorne that you like the most? His name starts with the letter P.
I'm not going to be able to answer that.
Yeah, there you go.
The actor's name starts with the letter P. Sorry.
Right.
Give it to me.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
So he was.
Are you kidding me, dude?
This is hilarious.
As soon as he was killed, I was probably done with Game of Thrones. But I was also done because I knew that Jon Snow was coming back, and I was like, "Fuck that."
So Jeremy, hold on. Let me back up. He's not going to be in this show. It's set before he's alive, but it is his same.
Even better.
Like, it's his family. It's his family.
Yeah.
So you telling me that we could potentially hear from
loosely.
Pedro Pascal's character, or no?
No. It's before he is alive. It's set roughly 1,000 years before the events.
That's
of Game of
cool
Thrones.
because I know they're gonna continue his presence, his confidence,
like
his
vibe.
aura.
His vibe is going to come through.
Well,
yes.
the other thing that
Give it to me.
The other area that this is hilarious. The other thing that fills though the Nymeria thing is Dorne is the Dorne in the North side, but really Dorne is the only one of the 7 kingdoms where women are equal. They can be warriors and stuff like that. So, and that's largely.
And you lost me again.
That's absolutely due
No.
I'm just kidding.
Let's
due
go.
to
Let's
Nymeria
do that. That's badass. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is gonna be the story of how this warrior queen kind of establishes that in Dorne, because that wasn't always the case. So that's incredible for me. The other thing that's cool about Nymeria is she's an explorer. So when she takes her people, they go south, and they actually go to South Rios and to the Basilisk Isles. So it'd be cool to see them explore these other. I think they may even go to the Summer Isles. I'm not sure, but it'd be cool to see them explore those other continents.
And Jeremy,
let's hear Julian give us the readout here.
I'm just saying,
want.
You've heard the name Nymeria before because one of the sand snakes in Game of Thrones was named Nymeria, and Arya's direwolf was also named Nymeria. Who comes back in the end of the series. So. She has quite a presence in the lore of the show.
So wait. So does that mean the actress herself will come back?
No, because we don't know. There's no actress. We've never seen her before. What?
Okay.
It's hundreds of years between Game of Thrones.
Her story is set roughly 1,000 years before.
Because her and what's her name from X-Men, terrible. That's all I gotta say.
Well, Sansa. You didn't like
Sophie
Sansa?
Turner.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. There's also the Sea Snake, with a working title called 9 Voyages. This is from the Rome creator. This is interesting. This is kind of an actual person that we know.
Wait. Was you talking about Rome, which was
the show on HBO?
Without HBO series, okay.
Yes.
How many seasons did we get of that?
There's
show?
only two. Yeah, Dan just watched them.
Wow. I never watched any of that. Did you guys watch it?
Excellent.
It kind of
recommend it.
I've heard it's good.
Is that after Spartacus or before?
It's before. It kind of starts the sword and sandal thing that was kind of all the rage at the time.
But then 300 took over the world, and then the rest is history. But okay, go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mean it after in terms of like when the movie
when it came out?
Because
right.
if you're interested, the history of it is exactly at the same time as Spartacus.
Okay,
takes place almost directly after.
No, at the exact same time.
Okay, that's
I'm
cool.
liking that.
So anyway, so this is coming from the Rome creator Bruno Heller, and follows Lord Corlys Valerion, a.k.a. the Sea Snake, the Lord of the Tides and the head of House Valerion.
Love it already.
The seafaring character also appears in the upcoming greenlit Game of Thrones prequel House of the Dragon. So again, more connective tissue.
That's the thing, right?
Okay,
wait. That's interesting to me.
House of the Dragon is the first show.
The first one, but this one takes place at the same time. This would take place concurrently with that show.
Perfect. This is great. This is the evolution.
This is part of the
everything we're talking about.
The politics of that time. So Corlys Valerion is involved, I believe. My history's gonna be rough on him, but with the Dance of the Dragon. So that's very interesting. So that would kind of lead into like a later season of House of the Dragon.
So he's actually we have an actor who's actually been cast as his character already. Steve Toussaint. Steve Toussaint.
Pull him up on IMDb.
I'm searching. I'm exploring. The explorer Steve Toussaint.
I'm currently I'm changing
Steve
every
Toussaint is
expectation.
A British actor who was born on March 22nd, 1965 in the UK.
You have to go to what he's.
Okay, I'm already.
Hold on. No, Jeremy, I'm ahead of you.
That's gonna be a good show.
He known
he
for
was
Prince
in
of
Judge
Persia.
Dredd, the Sylvester Stallone version. Yes.
Yeah, but I think he was probably a child in that movie. I don't think he.
1995. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah. Looks like he was also in the Point Break remake, which TV.
I haven't seen that movie, but I think about that trailer every now and then. Actually,
you think about the Point Break remake trailer?
Yes, because that's like one of those trailers where it's like we're in the realm of remakes. Like we're going to just do better than before. But I haven't seen that movie. To be fair.
All right, fair enough.
Have you guys seen that movie? I don't know. Like,
nah, man.
Okay.
Sorry, what movie were we talking about again?
The Point Break remake.
Oh, absolutely not. There's no way. I've never even seen the original Point Break. And
you should watch the original.
Yes, you have.
I've never seen it. I have because I've seen Fast and Furious, so I've seen Point Break. Nah. It's the same.
You're
movie.
right. You know what? Julian is right. Fast and Furious is a better Point Break movie. I'll give him that.
I don't need to. I've already seen it.
It's done. Paul Walker, Vin Diesel.
But
let's move on.
The original Point Break is also directed by Catherine Bigelow, so you have to get there's something there.
That's a movie club. One of these days, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. Put that on the list, Dan. Put that on the list.
Get that black book open.
Let's go. He's not putting it in the list. He's not putting it down. Okay, write it on your palm. Maybe like just Point Break and then like part of it erases. Break? What? Okay, so Sea Snake we're talking about. So in Martin's lore, Valerion is the husband of Princess, I don't know how to say this, Rhaenys Targaryen?
Yeah.
Played by...
Daniel, wait, quick. Daniel, let's give us a quick summary. What the hell that fucking means?
Hold on, I'm reading it. That's what I'm doing. Played by Eve Best in House of the Dragon. So they've also been cast as character. So this effort represents a potential spin-off of a character from a series that hasn't even been shot yet.
Yep.
Also given to
nothing.
Toussaint's casting, the Sea Snake could represent the first Game of Thrones project with a person of color as the lead character.
Right. Okay, so
that's interesting.
But that's basically nothing. Daniel, give us the breakdown here.
Well, just Corlys, Valerion, and Rhaenys Targaryen they're one side of the Targaryen civil war in Dance of the Dragons. So it's I believe they're the Reds, and then the other side is the Blacks, which is
okay. So how do you see that play out? What does one side have over the other? What's going on really?
So
this is great, Jeremy. You need to bring this energy to every episode.
I will from now on.
I think I appreciate that.
So the drama, without spoiling anything, attempting to not spoil anything, the drama in the Dance of the Dragons is that the king dies. I believe it's Viserys the First, and he at one point had legitimized his daughter. This has never happened in Westeros before, to make his daughter the heir.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Rhaenyra. That would be the black side. Rhaenys is her aunt, and there's a whole like council that's called essentially because a woman has never ascended to the throne, and that's sort of the drama. It's about whether Rhaenyra can take over the throne or not, and this is when she's relatively young.
Interesting.
So then this is just the other side of that. There's no good guys or bad guys because they're all kind of shitty.
It's just it sounds a lot like traditional Game of Thrones, which is like confusing family dynamics and
but what did she bring to the table here?
Who?
She's the first female leader of this.
No, the person we're talking about right now is a male.
Sorry,
Corlys Valerion is a man. He's the head of House Valerion. He marries Princess Rhaenyra, or Rhaenys, rather.
Right. Sorry. So that's my question. What does she bring to the table here? What's the dynamic here?
Well, her she's his husband basically.
Well, no, she's gonna be
whatever you mean.
Played by Eve Best in House of the Dragon, and that'll be her major role. Like she's one of, if not the main character of House of the Dragon.
So she's very connected to the whole dragon type.
So the idea is this Sea Snake show.
Does she have her own
spin-off.
Dragon?
Yeah, she does, and she feeds people to it.
Sick.
What is the dragon called?
Ooh.
Oh, okay,
deep cut. That one's tough.
Sunwing. Sunwing is Aegon II's dragon.
This is like the questions that this is like.
Let's go, Daniel. Let's
people
go.
Ask kids.
I'll think about it. Keep talking. I'll think about it.
Okay, so this brings us to another project that for my money, bottom of my list here in terms of
which is an animated series.
No, we're not there.
No, the Flea Bottom. Flea
Bottom. This project is set in notorious King's Landing slum.
Great setting. Let's go.
No, I disagree. This is a boring setting. The maze of tight streets in the capital, where characters like Davos Seaworth and Gendry Baratheon were born.
Gendry.
So what did I say? Gendry? Sorry, Gendry. One imagines this having a bit of a Peaky Blinders and Westeros vibe.
Haven't seen Peaky Blinders. Have any of us seen Peaky Blinders?
I have seen the first episode, and the first episode and the half of the second episode.
Very popular.
It's very popular, but I know
a lot of people who tune into
the
this show.
reason why it's so popular, in my opinion, it's one of those kind of like, I gotta be careful how I say this, because it's like, it's another example of Suits for me. When we talk about this, how Suits, like,
I hate Suits, by the way.
People love Suits. But like,
I despise
Suits. When people say they love Suits, I know that I don't have the same taste in television as them. You know what I mean?
But here's what I'll say. Suits season 1, whatever the fuck that is, like, okay,
yeah,
great. Maybe it's even phenomenal. Who knows? Like, it's probably very cool.
Yeah,
but who cares? Like, why? Like, no. What business are they running? What are they trying to achieve?
They're
like,
lawyers, Jeremy. They're just lawyers who are good
at
their job.
Exactly.
That's it.
Who cares? It's done. One season.
So what I'm saying
that's
is,
it.
what I'm saying about Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders is very stylish,
like, whatever.
And it's got a really cool cast, and but like, it's just a very like by the numbers kind of, for me.
You also said bottom of the barrel, right? Didn't you?
Well, this for me is off this list.
I mean,
is the one that's least interesting, because I don't think
I'd agree.
I don't know what the story is here.
Sure, but they probably know that as well. I mean, bottom is in the title, so I'm sure there's going to be something here that we're going to be able to kind of extrapolate and find some entertainment in. So
here's what I would say.
Let's hear it.
This one, more than any of the others, is them charting new territory.
Okay.
What I mean to say is, like, this doesn't have. I mean, obviously, Flea Bottom is an area in the books, but there aren't really a lot of characters who explore Flea Bottom to
generally leave and have more interesting lives.
Okay, and like, and how much George are we getting into?
Well, he's apparently associated with all these projects. He's working with all of them, apparently.
That's extremely interesting.
Yeah, so maybe it's an opportunity for him to flesh out Flea Bottom, and maybe there are characters that would be.
I guess, but like, we just
the other thing actually that I just realized now that's cool about the Flea Bottom one, it doesn't specify in here when. Right. So you could imagine a Flea Bottom show concurrent with Game of Thrones or close enough.
Is that interesting though?
Potentially.
I don't know.
There's a lot of intrigue, right? There's a lot going on.
I think that like it's the idea of, hey, this is a story that's taking place. Like, let's explore the characters who are being displaced by by the war or whatever that's happening. Like, I think that's an interesting idea, but I don't think it makes for a good TV show.
No, it's more about what these people are doing, because there still are people there, and it's not like they're just hanging out, not thinking. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but
Game of Thrones is always positioned in such a way that we ignore the average people, right? And that's how all the characters in the show treat the commoners.
It's rare that we spend time with them, and when we do, they're like typically treated like shit.
Exactly. So it's interesting to get another perspective on things, because these are the people that will be the spies for the elites, right? These are the people that'll be the cut purses and cat's paws and that kind of stuff. So it's interesting.
So they say like this last sentence is something exploring the lives of everyday citizens and the criminal underworld rather than the powerful lords and ladies. I think cool an idea. I just don't know how much of an interest. Like, you just really need to find a really compelling character. I think to drive.
It's also like a lack of information.
But what we know about Flea Bottom, for me, doesn't inspire a lot of like interest in what that is.
Just bowls of brown.
Doesn't
people eating
it's
soup.
Just really gross. I feel like a lot of the time
the bowls of brown, like, it's like a stew, and like the idea is like it's mystery meat, and if you're lucky, it's pigeon or rat, but it's most likely people.
Gross. Okay. So that brings us to the animated series. No details on the subject or style of the animated project, but an animated venture gives a couple of storytelling advantages. It could portray a lavish amount of spectacle beyond even Game of Thrones standards, and/or could tell a story that spans considerable stretch of time. Much of Martin's previously published supplemental materials are in an encyclopedia from that sketches out thousands of years of Westeros history. A breezy storytelling style that's far easier to portray on screen using animation, where producers could quickly introduce various characters and settings, and then rapidly move on without having to cast actors or build sets.
I'm not on board with that.
I think I'm more on board with the column A, where he talks about like a more lavish amount of spectacle. I think is exactly what the words he uses here. It was when I heard a Game of Thrones animated series, I think of like huge battles between like massive armies. That's something you could portray in animation in a way, maybe. And I'm thinking, by the way, when I'm thinking animation for this show, I'm thinking something similar to like the Castlevania art style that they've got on Netflix, which is almost like it's a bit of an Western anime kind of style influence. Very gory, but I mean, if you're doing a war thing, I think that could be pretty cool.
It could definitely be cool. I think it lends itself best to the Dance of the Dragons, but now we're finding out that's not what the case is going to be. So, the World of Ice and Fire, which is the encyclopedia being referenced here, they kind of already did that with the special features and all the Blu-rays.
Yeah, but no one watched those, Dan.
But nobody's going to watch an animated TV show that's like the history of the West, and here's the history of the Reach.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that would be boring. It would feel like reading an encyclopedia, and no one wants to do that.
Well, the cool thing about the way that the encyclopedia is written is that it's in-world. It's written by a maester in-world. So the show could be like, okay, maybe it's King Tommen, and there's a maester reading him bedtime stories, and animate those. That's kind of cool.
So it's like a Princess and the Bride situation?
Sort of, yeah.
All right, okay. Jeremy, do you have any questions for Daniel on this show?
No, not really. I think you went over everything. But in terms of the animated series, like, when I think of that, I think of the Marvel version, right? Like, we have the What If series. So
yeah,
I just feel like it's just another take in that world that's going to be fleshed out in a different way. So I'm sure people will dig that.
Yeah, and then there's there's an etc. here, which is also there's a Game of Thrones prequel that's no longer in consideration. We talked about this. An untitled project starring Naomi Watts from the writer Jane Goldman that was set thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones and focused on the age of heroes leading to the Long Night. HBO shot a pilot for the project in 2019 and then decided to not move forward with the idea to series.
I suppose it could be cool to do the Age of Heroes animated because there's a lot of like fantasy elements there. There's a lot of magic.
The Age of Heroes. Where have we heard that before?
I'm sure that'll be greenlit now.
Yeah. Shout out
to Marcos here. With Jeremy on the edge of seat.
Yeah, Jeremy's on the edge of seat. Yeah.
Please expand on that, Marcos.
You got a lot of energy.
Your energy seems like you want to hear more. You're on the edge of the seat to hear more about these Game of Thrones projects.
No, like I'm definitely excited about a few of these here for sure. Like I think they're going to be worth your time. But it's like, when are we going to see these things?
That's the other good question.
Yeah, I mean, if the first one is 2022, we'll get House of Dragon next year. Okay. And then after that, who knows?
Well, here's what I would say: if House of the Dragon is where they're going to start.
The most
which we all agree is probably the best.
Sea Snake off.
Yes, Sea Snake probably makes more sense. It would probably be like, if I'm picturing them doing an actual full season of Aegon, then maybe Sea Snake is concurrent with like season 3 or 4
maybe
of Dragon, but who knows?
Do we like the Aegon? To me, I'm just thinking Aragon here.
Do we like the name? Do we want to revise the name?
What's going on here?
It's clearly inspired by Aragorn. I think that's not. He's not been shy about his influence. The Lord of the Rings influences.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings certainly influenced the work. I don't know if.
I mean, I don't know. To be fair, George R. R. Martin's naming conventions have always been kind of like, it's just like take a regular name and then like remove a couple letters or like add in weird letters in the middle. And it kind of, it's sometimes, like,
I don't know if I would agree with that either. But anyways.
Margot said here, yeah, I'm locked. I am. Like, I'm excited. Like I said, I feel like it's too many projects, but I'm down to kind of deep dive, each one individually. I'm sold on the first one. I feel like if that's the first one,
that's all you need, man.
Let's see that. Let's see that realized. Right. I'm excited for that one. But I'm not going to give up the joke on George R. R. Martin like being kind of unhealthy here. Like I don't know what that guy looks like right now. Like I don't know how old he is. Like let's come on. Let's write these things. Let's get the books out at least. The very least, screw these contracts things with HBO. Get the books out.
He just signed it.
Get the books out.
He just signed it.
Finalize your version. Yeah. Of the Song of Fire and Ice. Let's get that out there because we were let down. Let's be fair here. We're let down. If he
doesn't finish it, it's going to be one of the greatest like unfinished works.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Like, and that's, we obviously want to avoid that, but like,
right.
Yeah. I don't know. We don't want to, let's not wish ill will upon George R. R. Martin. Let's hope he lives a long and interesting life.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on to the last kind of... actually, before we move on, Jeremy, what's to you the most exciting? Is it just it's House of the Dragon, right? That's what's got you the most excited?
Right. And what is Marco saying here? Is he expecting a rundown from me or Daniel?
He's expecting you to do a rundown of all the shows from now on.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the least we can ask of you. Okay, so let's get into the last kind of miscellaneous stories. Nothing huge here. Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars animated series is coming to Disney Plus on April 2nd with some of the old droid series. You guys remember the old Clone Wars show that was like animated like Samurai Jack?
Yeah.
So it's from the creator of Samurai Jack. So that was for a long time not considered canon. They're canonizing pieces of it, but it's ultimately will not continue to not be canon. But it's been really hard to access. I have the DVDs, but unless you have the DVDs, you really was no way to get it. So it's kind of cool that they're bringing it to Disney Plus.
What is it called?
It's just called Clone Wars, and then the new, like the one that we're familiar with, is called The Clone Wars,
which is a TV series.
Which is a TV series, yeah.
Which was canceled, and then they did
brought
one more
back,
season.
and then Netflix survived it, and then it came back again with Disney Plus.
But that's like a 3D animation, and what you're
correct.
talking about is a
2D.
like a cartoon 2D animation.
2D animated in the
but
style
two
of Samurai
movies
Jack.
that includes like major characters and major plot points.
Yeah, Obi-Wan. All the big characters from the Clone Wars are there, like Obi-Wan, Yoda, Shakti.
What about there's a female like
Windu.
Sith character, right?
Yes, she's introduced into this for the first. I think the first time you see her is in this.
Is she dual wielding lightsabers?
Yes, she has two. She has two red lightsabers.
Adventurous.
Right. Yeah, she's pretty cool actually. She becomes a much more nuanced, interesting character in the television series. So that's interesting and exciting that they're bringing that. The exception to the stuff that they're bringing, this old stuff that they're bringing to Disney Plus, not bringing the Christmas special, the holiday special. Whoops.
Unfortunate.
This is apparent. The thinking is that this is actually a contracted stipulation from George Lucas when he sold it that it would not be like released wide. That is the one thing he hates the most out of all.
And
of
how
Star Wars
crazy
stuff.
is that George Lucas is kind of like, you know,
he's just living his life, man.
He's living his life, but he's also like in the
life.
background of what's his name on The Mandalorian.
Oh well, I mean of Jon Favreau and
Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni.
It's like,
Dave
wow.
Filoni's like he's the student. He's carrying on. He's the Padawan but
Disney
his Jedi
paid
Master.
George Lucas $4 billion for this.
Yes, that's right.
And the people that are in charge now at Disney
are like his
don't
stewards.
care about Disney. They care about the original content, what George Lucas created, and they're literally in contact.
They're just using Disney's money
with him while they create the new content for Disney Star Wars. So,
by the way, this is not on here, but this is really cool. Is that they're re-releasing the Clone Commando video game called Republic Commandos that came out for like the GameCube and like PlayStation 2.
I don't think it was on GameCube. I think that's one of the ones that wasn't on GameCube. It was on Xbox and PS2 probably.
Yeah.
GameCube just had a Clone Wars game, and they had a Jango Fett game as well, I believe. I forget what that was called.
That Jango Fett game, I don't think that Jango Fett game ever came out. Or did? Oh, yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. You could hover and stuff. I actually do know what you're talking about.
I have. I played it recently, actually.
Yeah, I'm thinking of 1313, which was a Boba Fett game that also didn't come out.
Yeah, that was canceled. That was Amy Hennig after Uncharted
stuff.
That's
the Amy Hennig game was later in the series of canceled Star Wars games. You could write a whole book on Star Wars video games that have been canceled. But anyway. So this is interesting. But the final note on this that I find most interesting is that despite the fact that the holiday special is not coming in full length, the animated section that introduces Boba Fett, the first time we ever saw Boba Fett was in the animated series inside the holiday special. That is coming. That is coming to Disney Plus, so you can see that.
We saw Boba Fett in an animated series before Return of the Jedi.
Yes. He came.
Empire Strikes Back. He
first appeared in the holiday special. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's one of those like weird kind of like fun kind of trivia questions you could like throw on a card.
And I think that actor also died just last year.
Yeah, the original actor who played Boba Fett.
And I believe his first name was Jeremy. I believe we share the same name.
Well, if his name is Jeremy, you do in fact
throwing that out there.
Makes sense that you remember that.
The next story, Jeremy, a little bit closer to your heart. Zack Snyder's The Army of the Dead.
Right.
Teaser trailer. This is coming to Netflix way sooner than we think.
Right.
Dan, your response to the trailer was that like it was kind of like a nothing teaser. There's nothing.
Well, no,
really
it's
there.
just like it's a zombie movie, and that's
right.
great. It's got everything you wanted of a zombie movie trailer. There's going to be a bunch of zombies and Dave Bautista.
What's that
kicking ass.
video game? The zombie game where you're in a mall. Is that Dead Rising?
Dead Rising, yeah.
I think it feels
maybe
like
the sequel to Dead Rising, or maybe the first one.
This one feels like it has like really inspired by that same kind of tone.
Yeah,
like,
the teaser, like Daniel said, whatever, right? Zombie apocalypse movie, whatever. Like we know Zack Snyder from Dawn of the Dead, who kind of reinvented the zombie genre.
That's where we know him from.
Yeah, like I still think we need to do a movie club of that movie. Like I would like
add it to the list, Dan. Add that to the list.
Well, I almost picked it, but we chose Armageddon kind of,
you were
together,
you were gonna do Dawn of the Dead.
Well, I was like, yeah, like we missed it out last October. It's like, fuck it, like he's kind of in
screw
the
it.
culture right now. Let's just do it
in April,
and especially since his new movie's coming out soon. But from what I've heard of this movie is that they're trying to kind of defy the expectations of the genre. In terms of what you expect. Exactly, right? But that's the point, right? Like kind of setting you up for what to expect, but then they kind of just go left field. So
love it.
And they talked about that, so I'm excited to see how that plays out. So why not? And this is Zack Snyder kind of completely unleashed, if you want to talk about the Snyder cut. Like, this is him. He came up with the story and the screenplay, and then Netflix just like, we'll sign you, do whatever you want, essentially.
Well, that's the Netflix MO. Like, hello, this is Netflix. You're greenlit. Like, that's that was the joke for a while. So I think that's funny. I mean, just use his money, like use Netflix's money. This funny thing, what I love about creators right now in Hollywood is that none of them are afraid or will bat an eye at using Netflix's money, but then at the same time will also go and be like, I also don't love streaming services, and like talk shit about them. Like, like Scorsese be like, yeah, of course I made my movie with Netflix because they were paying me to do it. They gave me a lot of money to make a movie that no one else is going to do it, but I also don't like streaming services. And I'm going to call it like it is.
You have to operate within the system. You can still be critical of the system.
That's fair. Okay. What is grief if not love persevering speech from WandaVision? I love that. I thought about that line for so long. It got a lot of it got so popular that it became not popular again. It kind of came all the way full circle on that. But anyway, that speech was rewritten at Paul Bettany's suggestion on set.
Love it.
And I was like, he's probably channeling his character from Knight's Tale. I think he's a poet in that movie. So that's probably what it is.
Probably not.
That's probably what it is. I think I'm onto something here.
I don't know. I think with Paul Bettany, it's just such an amazing story in terms of where he started in the MCU as the voice of Jarvis.
His first line in the MCU is "Giving the weather." That's his first.
And then Joss Whedon kind of just thinking ahead of the curve and hey, you want to be Vision in this whole thing?
It makes so much sense.
Just super cool. I love it. And that's my favorite part of WandaVision. It's just their dynamic and just kind of fleshing that out a bit more, making us really realize how they care for one another. That's kind of my extrapolation from WandaVision.
I also just love Paul Bettany as an actor generally. His interviews are always exciting and interesting, and his whole
he was
thing
poking
about
fun
trolling
at this
the fans.
Yeah, he was poking fun of this whole thing, right? I'm super excited to work with this actor. I've never worked with him before. I love that. And it was himself. It was himself. So
he's like, everyone was like, who's it going to be? Is it going to who's it going to? And it turns out he wanted to work with himself.
And I was a part of everyone else talking about Magneto and let's bring Fassbender in. And Dan was like, no, you guys, you don't get it. They're just having fun.
It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. So that's funny. So the quote from the interview is, "The scene in the Avengers compound wasn't doing what we needed it to do." That's from an interview with Esquire. So I just think that's cool. It's one of those kind of peek behind the curtains. I just think it's a really cool line. It is arguably probably the show's best, one of its best moments is that second last episode when they're doing kind of this retreat back through everything and kind of explain everything. It's good stuff. Okay. So there's a new Star Trek film in the works, and J.J. Abrams will be producing, not directing. There hasn't been a Star Trek on the big screen since 2016 with Star Trek Beyond. Which is also
but at that point we had a trilogy of a reboot.
We did, but the last one wasn't directed by Abrams. It was just it was also produced by Abrams. So it was in that same vein. But here's what I find interesting about this. So J.J. Abrams, he left directing those movies after Star Trek Into Darkness, which is considered to be the worst of the trilogy.
He did two of them.
He did two of them, and the first one is really good. I still really, really like his JJ, the first JJ reboot.
Yeah,
it's really, really good.
It's very, and it's memorable.
I just think it's it really nails the tone and in a refreshing way. But what's interesting is
and on top of that, let's give a shout out to Chris Pine.
Oh, absolutely, he steals the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing in that movie. And so that tone, that style of Star Trek, which for a lot of classic Trekkies was really hard to stomach. I think he was really flashy, more actiony, felt more like Star Wars than Star Trek in a lot of ways. It's really bled into the television side, not as much. I think they're really trying to make a balance, but that visual style, Dutch angles and the lens flares and like going through like shooting from outside in space and through the glass and inside and like in one cut, all that stuff, that's really translated to the television side. And the effects on the television side are really good, so it actually works. Stuff like with Star Trek Discovery and what's coming off of that. So another JJ produced Star Trek film I think could be really interesting. What would be the most fascinating and would be like really true to the franchise's roots would be like, okay, then do a Discovery movie, because like we got like the original cast did the original Star Trek movies, then you had the next gen movies based off that cast, but then we had this JJ universe which is completely separate, not based off of a show, right? Kind of retelling almost the original series. So you could, in a way, kind of bring Star Trek back to the big screen and kind of tie it into the TV universe in a more cohesive way.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll do it that way, but
could be interesting. I mean, is Discovery that popular?
It basically single-handedly kept CBS All Access alive.
Well, I mean, that's a feat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something, and it's not It's kind of it is the kind of flagship show for Paramount Plus.
I wasn't being sarcastic. Like, that's seriously a feat, because if they have nothing else,
well, yeah, it was that and all the people who I guess maybe subscribed for CSI. I don't.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, but so I don't know. That's interesting. We don't know anything about it yet, but I would prefer to keep JJ on the producer side, kind of more of a stylistic influence than maybe necessarily as the director for these pictures going forward. What do you guys think? Do you guys want another Star Trek movie?
Yeah. I want there to always be Star Trek.
Yeah.
As long as there's Star Wars, there should be Star Trek.
There's lots of Star Trek right now, just not on the big screen. Jeremy, what about you? Your dad was a big Star Trek fan, right?
Oh, yeah, still is. I mean, I think it all lands with Chris Pine. I feel like he's the go-to. I feel like he knocked it out of the park. Like,
yeah.
That's
Carl Urban.
Urban, yeah,
great.
Right. Yeah. But Spock wasn't. I don't think Spock was as memorable. Like that casting, right? The guy from the Heroes,
Zachary
right?
Quinto.
Yeah.
But still cool.
Yeah, right.
Still cool.
I thought he did I think he did a fine job as Spock. I think that the chemistry between Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto is also pretty good.
Right.
Maybe not like Kirk and like traditional Kirk and Spock chemistry.
Right.
They had like something special, but it's hard to capture lightning in a bottle twice, you know.
But it's been some time, so I'd imagine like if a teaser came out or whatever, like it would just reinvigorate.
But what if?
Whole thing.
How about this? How about this for a crazy idea? We reinvented we kind of split the timeline, right, with the JJ verse. That's what's the kind of thing that's interesting about the JJ stuff, is that it's technically the same universe. It takes place in the same universe. It's just a split timeline, right? So what if we did then? Okay, we're gonna do the JJ version of the next gen crew. So we get like a new Picard and like a new. First of all, if you can recast Kirk, can you recast Picard? That's the question.
I feel like they're probably happy that they. I feel like they're happy that they completed the JJ trilogy, and they're excited to move on with new creative processes. So
now, who's doing the corporate speak?
What do you mean? I'm calling it back to the DC stuff. I'm doing it on purpose.
Okay. But would you want to see? Like a refreshed version of the next gen? No, that's just too. That's too.
I think it's too soon. And like I said, it's all in Chris Pine.
That show.
I feel
the
like
next gen's from the '80s.
They just made a Picard show.
That's true.
That's kind of that's
nobody watched that.
I watched it, and it wasn't very good.
You know what? You matter. Okay, you matter. Just letting you know.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I watched it. I watched all the Star Trek stuff that's come out, and in fact. It's really, really good, and I wish more people were watching it, or it's easier to watch for more people.
You just said Picard was bad,
except for Picard.
Oh, okay.
There is good there's good elements of Picard, but I think it's not a great cohesive whole. It's got moments. There's a scene with Data in the finale, or maybe the episode before the penultimate episode, that is like top shelf next gen stuff. Like it's like really, really good. So would recommend just for that scene. Maybe even just watch that scene. It's really cool. So, Warner Bros. Is maybe developing a Harry Potter and the Cursed Child film. We talked about this, I feel like, at one point when we were talking about the future of Harry Potter, and I said, didn't they make another book? Like, couldn't they just, adapt that? And I think your answer was, like, Dan, you're like, no, that's a bad idea. Don't do that.
Well, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Cursed Child, but I'm pretty sure it's a stage play, not a book.
Okay, right. But even easier to adapt.
Which it should be easy enough to adapt.
Right.
And it's written by Rowling, so I mean, like, why not? That's a cash cow for Warner Brothers.
Yeah, well, it's another one of those like cornerstone franchises that they need to keep alive.
Go for it.
And then Superman and Lois, just for another version of Superman. That show is been renewed for season 2 on CW, and the reviews have been good. People are saying it's like a nice, refreshing version of Superman, like a more traditional version we haven't seen in a long time. So anyway, I've seen the opening 10 minutes of the first episode, which is kind of like a montage of like Superman like greatest hits stuff. It's good. I like that. I dug that anyway. What was that?
My water bottle.
Oh, okay. And then we're gonna close on I'll just quickly mention some things that I've been watching that I just want to shout out that I thought are really great. I watched Bad Times at the El Royale, which is a movie from 2018. This movie is amazing, Jeremy. I think you would really, really like it if you haven't seen it. It's got like a Smokin' Aces vibe to it, with like more of like a mystery element. It's really, really fun. Easily one of the best movies I've seen in like a very long time. If you haven't seen that, give it a watch. I watched 310.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I keep forgetting the name of the movie. I keep going to watch that movie, and I'm like, oh, it's something else something, and I keep typing L into every streaming service that I have, and like I can't find it, but I'll figure it out.
Bad Times at the El Royale. It's available on the Star section of Disney Plus.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, not available in the States, but great here. I'm really a fan of that content. They like a lot of good stuff. Mission to Mars was on there.
Right.
All the Alien movies are in there. Like it's good. There's quality stuff in there.
Crimson Tide. If you haven't seen Crimson Tide, you have to watch that movie.
But Armageddon, another movie we're watching next month. That's also on that Stars section. Highly recommend that. And then I also watched 310 to Yuma from 2007.
Ooh. Russell Crowe, Christian Bale.
Oh, so good, Jeremy. Have you seen this movie? It's so
good. Oh, for
good.
sure. That was around the time where like the whole Western type stuff was really popular again. And they were churning out movies.
Man, I was in a mood for a Western, and it satiated me so perfectly. Like you just
give us a quick kind of rundown. Was Christian Bale better than Russell Crowe? Was Russell Crowe better than Christian Bale? What was the standout?
Russell Crowe has like is evoking like pure charisma in this movie because he plays a bad guy technically. He's an outlaw.
Oh yeah. Christian Bale's kind of
Christian Bale's like an everyman. He's like a rancher or whatever.
He's got kids or whatever. But they talk about him.
It's like this is his moment to like do something with his life.
Meaningful,
yeah. And it's like it really all ties together, and the dynamic between Christian Bale and this outlaw character is so cool. Like and obviously again Russell Crowe is just being pure cool in this movie, which I think really works.
So what like essentially Russell Crowe kind of gives the Christian Bale characters due, right, or something like that.
Yeah,
like he kind of gives him the payoff that he kind of deserves.
I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, without spoiling.
There is a very satisfying moment at the end of the movie that again without spoiling, it's hard to say. Just like a very satisfying moment at the end of the movie, and yeah, I don't know. I really liked it. Dan, you kind of, when I mentioned I said I watched it, you said like it just kind of felt like you recall it as being like a generic Western. Yeah. I think it kind of distills a lot of that Western stuff and does it in a really kind of exciting way. So it makes it fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean 2007, like they were kind of capitalizing on that whole like kind of like that was the thing, right? Like there was a bunch
Westerns
of movies.
were coming back. There was a couple of them at the time.
There was the one with what's his name?
With Rooster Coburn, Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, right?
Movie called.
Where a snake he gets bit by a snake. She gets bit by a snake in that movie. I don't remember what that movie's called.
It's like the sixth time that movie's been made.
True Grit.
Right.
I don't. Is that around 2007? I feel like that's later.
I think it's close.
It's probably later, but like I just kind of categorize that all in the same time frame, maybe. Yeah.
Ooh, 2010, Dan. Right? Good.
There we
go. 2010.
Nice.
So 3 years later. Yeah, I guess that's fair. I don't know. Like I don't like. The thing with Westerns is like there'll be a Western that comes out every once in a while that's pretty good.
There was the Brad Pitt one too, right?
That's the one that was filmed here. Like
yeah. It's got a long title.
Yeah, it's like the life and
with
death
Casey
of
Affleck.
Yeah, the life and death of blah blah blah. Some like greatest
the outlaw.
Billy.
Jesse James.
Jesse James.
Yeah. Okay, we got there. And it's probably not
Let's
the
confirm.
movie
Let's confirm
title.
here.
What's the actual movie title? Jesse James movie. Oh crap.
Yeah, so
the assassination of Jesse James by the coward.
Yeah, by the coward Rich.
Sorry, it continues. By
Richard
the coward
Crawford.
Robert Ford.
Robert Ford, yeah.
By the way, this is a terrible name for a movie. This is a bad title.
Terrible, yes.
This is like the 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. It's too long and too wordy.
But at least you know what you're kind of in for. But then it's just like it's like fleshed out so much more than that.
It gives you the synopsis. The title is the synopsis of the movie. Like it just there's no nuance there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So is Star Wars.
I suppose. So anyway, that's exciting. I watched that, and then I also watched. I'm ashamed of this. I watched The Last Pirate Kingdom.
Lost Pirate Kingdom.
Sorry, did I say The Last?
Mm-hmm.
So The Lost Pirate Kingdom on Netflix, which is in that vein, very similar to, by the way, the last. I don't know if you guys seen it yet. The Last Blockbuster, which is that just
the Lost Blockbuster.
the Last Blockbuster. Thinking about The Last Blockbuster. The Last Blockbuster, which is this
Jedi.
they're like documentaries, but there's like for some reason they bring in random celebrities that are completely unrelated or comedians to just kind of talk about them.
They're called docudramas.
And this one is a docudrama because they're actually dramatic elements, but there's also like I don't know. I think there's a couple of them on Netflix now.
Yeah, there's one. There's the Roman Empire. They do 3 different seasons, and each
Right.
one they do a different emperor. It's Caligula, Julius Caesar, and I don't remember the third.
They just feel they feel like like legacy History Channel shows because each episode starts with like a recap of the episode you just watched. Even though you're watching it on a streaming service, you're like, I just watched that. Like you're gonna spend 10 minutes explaining,
we don't need a previously
retelling me. No, but it's like it's not even. It's enhanced previously on. It goes into the whole story again, shows you the same scene sometimes, like over again. I'm like, I don't understand why we need to do this every time. I mean, I don't know. The algorithm says it has to be done. But anyway, it's about the Pirates of the Caribbean, like the historic figures that that make pirates interesting and fun. And it really treats it fairly light. Like it doesn't really dive too deep into the kind of grosser stuff about how everyone had syphilis and all that kind of stuff. But it does put me in the mood for like watching like a Muppets Treasure Island or something like that, because honestly, I think, we did vampires, we did zombies, we did westerns for a while there. We just talked about everything's had its kind of time in the sun. Pirates haven't really had their we need to do more stuff with pirates.
Training.
I want more pirates. I might go rewatch Black Flag.
I'll tell you what's missing.
Black Sails.
I'll tell you what it is. It's not pirates. What's missing is dinosaurs from modern. We need more dinosaur stuff. It's really only Jurassic World.
Need it.
That's what's missing, eh?
That's all there is. It's just one.
It's funny, Dan. We were talking about this before. I was like, it is weird that we don't see dinosaurs more often. It's just the Jurassic World movies that keep it alive.
The answer is like it's hard to write like how are there dinosaurs?
Time travel. It has to be time travel.
It has to be either time travel or genetic engineering.
Did you watch that show? Did you watch that show? It was kind of coming off of the Tales of Lost, and it was about like these settlers from Earth, but they have to go back in time.
Terra Nova. Yeah,
right.
I did.
Right. So you watched that show, and that show wasn't very good, right? I'm not, if I recall correctly, but there was dinosaurs in it.
There were dinosaurs. The show was okay. I watched the entire first season. I don't know if
I don't think it did.
That's unfortunate because we need more dinosaur content out there.
We already have all the Jurassic Park movies. What do you need? What more do you need?
Well, I mean, honestly, they feature like 6 types of dinosaurs. There's a million different dinosaurs out there.
Is there a million?
There's a lot of different types of dinosaurs.
Okay, but is there a million?
Probably not. I'm going to say probably not a million. But
right,
maybe. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. We just don't know.
Maybe. Actually,
we don't know. We don't know.
Certainly thousands.
How do you determine like type? Like if they evolved from this to that? Like is that a different new one?
Well, paleontologists have that figured out.
Okay, anyway.
They have taxonomy figured out.
There's just no way to know. There's just no way to know.
That's like day one.
Okay, anyway. So I watched The Lost Pirate Kingdom. I thought it was kind of like, if you wanted like a refresher on why pirates are cool, would watch that. And then I also watched Ghostbusters Answer the Call, which is that 2016 like reboot that they did with like Kristen Wiig and stuff. And honestly, pretty good. Chris Hemsworth is fucking hilarious. He plays like a himbo in this movie, and like he's like the dumb secretary. And I was gonna make an allusion to it earlier when we were talking about like not having. Anyway, he wears glasses, but they don't have lenses because he's like he kept having to rub. Having to clean them. So he's like, well, if I don't have lenses, I don't have to clean them anymore. So it was really good. Anyway, I just thought I thought it was way better than, if I recall, there's like just all this stuff at the time about like, we don't need a girl only reboot of this or whatever. Like, I just thought like this was a fun, it's better than Ghostbusters 2. I'll tell you that. And it's like, it captures the spirit of the first movie. I would have been happy to see a sequel to this that we'll probably never get. But we are getting that other Ghostbusters movie that Jeremy mentioned earlier with Paul Rudd as the late main character, which actually does look really awesome, but we have no idea when that's coming. It was like announced, we got a trailer, and then it was obviously delayed because of COVID, but it's like kind of disappeared. Anyway, all I'm saying is Ghostbusters, a lot of fun. If you haven't seen it, looking for something like fun and breezy to watch, It's certainly not reinventing the wheel here, but it's funny and it's fun. Would recommend. Have you guys watched anything interesting lately?
I have a suggestion. Both of you should watch it, and I'm sure most of our fans will be into
I swear
it
to God,
well.
I swear to God, if you say some sci-fi show, The Expanse, yeah,
season 6, it gets really good.
Holy shit, that's hilarious. He's like, it does get good in season 6. Is there only 5 seasons?
Only 4.
Okay, I don't know.
5. There's 5. That's
gonna say,
yeah, I was just joking.
But it's a good joke.
You absolutely should watch The Expanse. But no, Invincible premiered on
right,
Amazon.
yeah.
I watched the first 3 episodes. That's all that came out.
The Mark Wahlberg movie, football movie. You were
not
talking
the Mark Wahlberg football movie.
That's great though too.
What are you talking about? That's a great. We went to see it in theaters as a football team. I think.
Vince.
That was Friday Night Lights.
No, I feel like we went to see Invincible together too.
We went to see the one where they're in jail.
Right. Shit. That's also a remake.
Oh, right, with The Rock.
No, was The Rock in it?
Yeah, it was
Adam Sandler. Jeremy's right.
Gridiron Gang. Yes, it was a remake of a 70s movie, I believe.
The Lost Yard is Adam Sandler, which maybe people went to as well. Or
The Longest.
The Longest Yard, isn't it?
Right. The
remake,
Last Yard.
Anyways, Invincible is it's an adaptation of a Robert Kirkman comic book series.
Right.
And it's kind of like adult comic books, like the world we've seen before. It's very similar to The Boys. It's like a Justice League clone.
We've talked about this movie. The show.
Yeah, we talked about the trailer on the podcast.
Yeah.
So the first 3 episodes, exactly what you would expect. Great animation, very violent, and it is like there is a Justice League clone in the show, but then there's more to it. J.K. Simmons is the dad figure.
Yeah.
The Omni-Man, so the most powerful, the strongest man in the world. He's that world's Superman.
Right.
So, only 3 episodes, not much to talk about without spoiling, but definitely recommend it.
So if you like The Boys, would you say this is a show worth watching?
If you like The Boys, it's similar because it's like, yes, there's superheroes, but there's also beheadings and there's also people swearing. And,
sign me up. Yeah. This is funny because like this is tonally very similar to what like some of that nightmare sequence stuff was, but like this doesn't. There's not as much of a clamoring for it as like what we got out of the Snyder.
The other thing I would say about Invincible,
characters are different,
again,
obviously.
avoiding spoilers, but typically I'd say like with a TV series, you give it like 5, maybe 6 episodes, and then whether or not you're into it. I think you'll know after episode 1.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Jeremy, have you been watching anything interesting?
No, I've just been completely enveloped with Justice League.
How many times have you watched it?
I watched it probably 3 times. I mean, I watched twice the regular version, and the Justice is Great, I think, came out recently.
So can we just quickly pause here? What did you think of the Justice is Gray version? Because for me, the clip that they released, like leading up to it,
right,
with Batman in the Batcave, I think talking to Alfred, was not as good as the original version because it was like you can't really see, you lose a lot of the detail. I thought it came much more muddied of a movie. What did you think of it in black and white?
Well, I haven't finished it, but for me, I mean, it's like I'm watching it for a third time, so I'm able to kind of dissect it differently. But for me, the black and white version, like in terms of Canada, right, with Crave, it's still 720p, so we're not getting the full kind of quality.
Should be 4K HDR.
Right,
HDR in black and white is so important because it's all about
exactly.
contrast.
So that's what Zack has mentioned in interviews before, is that the HDR version, the 4K HDR version of this movie is his kind of perfect version of it. So, and when I hear that and I see those interviews, I'm like, yeah, I feel like in terms of the consistent kind of quality throughout, I feel like a black and white version kind of glosses over the CG and just really makes it like this consistent, cohesive look, which I kind of dig. So, but again, it's only 720p I'm seeing this in. But I'm not one of those people who's gonna like say, "Oh, this is stupid" or "This shouldn't be there." Because I'm one of those people who says you can pause his movie at any moment and it just looks so cool. Like it's almost like a painting,
like
every
still
time you
or
pause
a
it.
frame from a comic. Yeah, like it could be a panel from a comic.
So I feel like the black and white can kind of gloss over the CG elements if you weren't into them, or they were kind of dissonant from the whole experience. And I feel like it gives a cohesive kind of a look throughout.
Okay.
If I would comment on the black and white version.
Sure, I'd appreciate that. I don't think that one's for me. If I'm gonna rewatch it, I'll rewatch it in color and in H, because I haven't seen it in HDR. I would like to get it a 4K HDR version of it. And maybe give it a shot in that setting. I just don't know when I'm gonna have like 4 hours to sit down and watch an entire movie again.
Fucking recording this podcast for 4 hours.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. This has been a long one. But I knew this was gonna be a long one.
Oh,
I knew
oh, you
from the
knew.
beginning.
Great that you knew.
Well, that's why I scheduled us for 7:30.
Dale had other plans Saturday night this evening. Come on.
Well, I do. This was a long one, but there was a lot to cover. So I appreciate everyone's patience. We can wrap it up here. Follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast. Head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, towerbabble.ca/live to watch us live and join us in the chat room. We typically record on Saturdays, but again, the Twitter is your best place to keep an eye on when we'll be going live. If you want to help support the show, head over to patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast. We'll be watching Armageddon for the film club in April, and we'll be dropping the Mission to Mars film club in a few days. I don't know when this is dropping in relation to it, so it'll be in that exclusive feed sometime soon. So anyway, keep an eye out for that, and again, it helps keep the lights on, and we really appreciate it. So until we meet again, I don't like that. Can we restart? Let's restart the podcast. Until next time, fuck, I really am losing it here at the very end.
Hey, we're signing off.
There'll be more TOB at some point soon. Is really what I want to get at. That's the takeaway here. And we'll talk to you then.
See ya.
Bye.